6:32 p.m. on August 30th, 2022. I'm calling this planning board to order. If we would all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Christy, if you do the roll call, please. Here.
John Walsh. Here. Tim Bolliger is absent, and Hector Tapanis is absent.
Thank you very much. Okay. Do we need have the previous board's minutes? I need if you guys have gone over that or accept them, I need a first and a second.
I recommend that we approve the minutes of the July 26th meeting.
I second it.
Oh, turn it off.
And I second it.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, same sign? All right, passes 3-0. All right. So the first thing on the new business is Resolution PB Victor 22-01, a Tractor Supply variance for parking and setbacks. All righty. Is there a, find it here and be able to read it properly.
We do have the applicant here.
We
to
do have
give
the
a-
applicant?
Yes.
Okay. Should we just knock out everybody that wants to speak tonight? Would that be the
I think
easiest
that's
way?
a very good idea.
Okay. If anybody is planning on speaking tonight for any reason, I need you to follow his direction here. If you do not do this, you will not be allowed to speak, even if later you change your mind. So go ahead.
So raise your right hand. If you stand up, please, if you intend to speak this evening. And you all be sworn in unison. Now, what I will ask you to do, or our chair will ask you to do, is identify your name when you come to the podium, because we won't be able to take your names down all in unison now. But this is the effort in swearing you in. These are the two items that we're going to be sworn in on. The first item is Tractor Supply variance for parking and setbacks. That's the first item on our agenda. The second item is the Bridlewood Plan Development. And so if you intend to speak on either one of those two items tonight, we're going to swear you in at this time. So if you have your right hand raised and you're standing, do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Mr. Chair, all of the witnesses have gone ahead and stood, and they have been sworn in.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody online? Okay, thank you. All right, if you would read the resolution for Tractor Supply, please.
Happy to do so, Mr. Chair. This is a resolution. The resolution number is PBV, as in Victor, 22-01. A resolution of the Plan Board of the City of High Springs, Florida, granting a variance as authorized under Section 12.02.01 of the City of High Springs Land Development Code as amended, providing for a setback from 35 feet to 13 feet and reducing the required number of off-street parking spaces from 110 spaces to 75 spaces within a commercial C3 zoning district on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of High Springs, Florida, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion at the appropriate time, Mr. Chair, is to pass Resolution PBV 22-01. And of course, you have the ability to move this to, or continue the matter to a date certain in the future, or you have the ability to deny the resolution as well.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Are the applicants here for this particular item? If you would like to speak or give a presentation, it'd be fine right now.
Thank you. Jennifer Nylander of Hicks Snedeker Development. I represent the developer, and we have before you for your consideration a Tractor Supply store, 19,000 square foot building with a fenced outdoor display yard, a garden center, and we are proposing 78 parking spaces.
I'm Mike Frieden. I'm with Jade Consulting. We're the civil engineers on the project, and as Jennifer mentioned, we are requesting a variance to reduce the parking based on the historical data for Tractor Supply. And if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
All right, thank you.
So we can give you a little more information on that. So with Tractor Supply, there were a couple of items that were why they needed a variance. So in the back side of the parcel, there is a very large stormwater basin. It takes up a very substantial part of their property that they can't mess with, so it has to stay that big. There was also some contamination on site from the previous truck stop many, many years ago, so they had to section off about 2 acres of it that is now unusable and not part of this parcel. So based on those limitations, staff does recommend approval for lowering the amount of parking because they still seem to meet what will be the need based on their calculations, and they are also going to be in the front yard setback just a little bit, but that's the highway enhancement zone, so it will not cause any issues.
Go ahead.
I would just like to add that we've also included enhanced landscaping in the highway overlay zone as well as in our parking aisles as well.
Okay.
Just to touch on that stormwater, this is in a closed basin, so we're restricted due to the topography. Yeah, so that's the reasoning for that larger stormwater pond.
Thank you. And they can't even pave over the hazard site and use it?
No, it's contaminated, so it's best that it is left alone.
So just to elaborate a little bit more on that, the contamination is limited to the far, south? Yeah, the furthest south portion of the property. We had an initial phase 1 environmental assessment done that discovered that there was some possible contamination. It was questionable. We went on to do a phase 2, and then we did 2 well testing, which gave us all clear on the part that we're buying.
Any more questions up here?
Yes. So my question for both of you or one of you that I would like answered, on drawing C9, there's a little pump station there. Is that station for the sewage that's coming from the building, and then this is pumped either to a force main or to a lift station?
That is correct. It is it's a grinder pump station that will pump from the store out to the force main that runs along 441. And we've coordinated with the city, and the city will actually be installing the pump station and tapping into the force main along.
Okay, that was my next question. So the city will own the pump station?
Yes, they will own it. I believe so. I need to double check on that one, but I've been coordinating with.
I think all the pump stations are owned by the city, aren't they? Even the ones in the residential? Yes, okay.
So that brings me to one other question in regards to that pump station. And maybe you can answer it. I don't see it on these drawings, but these are not a complete set of drawings. Will there be some type of alarm system, both either visually or audible, if that pump station fails, or the grinder pump station?
Yeah, it's a duplex pump station, so it has 2 motors that run. One runs and then the other one runs, and there's alarms for each of those, and that's all per DEP rules and regulations. So there is alarms on all the systems in case there is some kind of failure. On one of
Okay,
the pumps.
very familiar with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody from the public that'd like to speak on this? I guess they're for the second one. Anybody raising their hands online? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, I guess that's the public forum is closed. Do you guys have any, want to discuss anything up here? Okay. All right, so we're closed up here. Any more chances for the public? Yes. Up here.
Located on 441, just north of Winn-Dixie, across the street from Winn-Dixie. Yeah, kind of good.
There used to be an old truck stop there years and years and years ago, so, okay. All right, then I
I think it's a reasonable request for a variance, and I recommend that we approve that item.
I second the approval.
Christie?
Donald Alderman,
Yes.
Brad Riddle,
Yes.
John Walsh,
Yes.
and Tim Bolliger and Hector Tapanis are absent. So motion passes 3-0.
Okay, I guess the next thing is the Tractor Supply site plan.
Correct. So there won't be any sort of resolution that goes with this one. This is
Right.
just the site plan for Tractor Supply, and then it'll move on to commission. So
Gotcha.
same thing that you just reviewed, except it's not, just about the variance. So it does meet all code now that they've been granted the variance. So staff recommends approval on this one as well.
I make a motion that we approve SIP 22-000006.
I second.
Christie?
Donald Alderman,
Yes.
Brad Riddle,
Yes.
John Walsh,
Yes.
and Tim Bolliger and Hector Tapanis are absent. Motion passes 3-0.
Okay, that closes item number 2, and I guess this item number 3 is what everybody's here for, so if I could get the attorney to read that, please.
Mr. Chair, this is resolution number PB Z 22-03. A resolution of the Plan Board of the City of High Springs, Florida, serving also as the local planning agency of the City of High Springs, Florida, recommending to the City Commission of the City of High Springs, Florida, approval of an amendment of 10 or more contiguous acres of land to the official zoning map of the City of High Springs Land Development Code pursuant to an application Z 22-03 by the property owner of said acreage, providing for rezoning from PD planned development and R1 residential to PD planned development -12 in accordance with a concept plan dated May 2022, submitted as part of an application dated April 2nd, 2021, of a certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of High Springs, Florida, repealing all resolutions in conflict, providing an effective date. The appropriate motion at the appropriate time is to pass resolution number PB/LPA Z 22-03. And of course, Mr. Chair, you have the ability to table this to a date certain in the future, or you can deny it. And if you pass it or deny it, you need to state on the record why you're passing or denying the matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Are the applicants here for this, or someone to speak on their behalf? Just a quick second. Because of how many people are here tonight, everyone other than the presentation will be limited to 3 minutes from the public. If the buzzer goes off, please stop and let the next person come up. Thank you. All right, go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. My name is Chris Potts, the Director of Engineering for JB Pro, and I have been sworn in. So we're here tonight to come before you for a PD amendment to the existing plan development that was approved back in 2005, January of 2005. And so we've gone through extensive review and coordination with staff. So this is not a rezoning or a land use change. I just want to remind the board that this is just an amendment to the existing PD that's already on property. And then in going through our presentation, I'll ask our landscape architect to come up as well to talk about the parks, Elizabeth Manley. So just a little bit of a background. The property is what everybody knows as the Tillman Acres. It's a little under 700 acres, and again, it has an existing PD and as well as an existing plat on the property. So going through the zoning, the development again is just a planned unit development that's currently active. It was approved in 2005 by the City Commission. The underlying land use allows 1 per 4 units per acre, residential suburban, which is compatible with the PD. So the current zoning and the current land use are compatible, but our request is not to change any of that. It's just to amend the PD ordinance that was approved back in 2005. So this is the current master plan that was part of the original PD that was approved in 2005. It was entitled for up to 800 units, which does not include the existing Tillman Acres of roughly 56 units. And part of it, there was no defined recreational or amenity areas in the PD ordinance. The PD for this original development was pretty vague on recreational items, required improvements, and that sort of thing. So these are just some of the current standards that stood out that we're going to look at modifying some of these with the current proposal. The minimum lot size in the current PD is 60 foot wide by 100, so 6,000 square feet. There's a 25-foot buffer around the property that's proposed, and then 200 of the residential units are allowed to be some sort of attached or multifamily component, or a mix hereof. And these are just excerpts from the current PD ordinance explaining those couple of items. And I know I briefly mentioned about an existing plat that's there. It's Tiamiami Gardens, which there are 3 phases of it based on the plat that was approved back in 1925. So those plats have not been vacated. Those lot sizes are 50 by 100. So there's roughly 100 or 1,440 of those lots that could be developed today if desired. That plat is under record under the clerk of courts and has not been vacated. So then the procedure for it, if those lots were to be developed, would be just to submit construction documents to the city and proceed. Platting would not be required because they were already approved almost 100 years ago. So with the existing platted lots and the 800 units for the PD, the property is actually entitled up to 2,240 units. Now, the existing PD ordinance did not have any language in it to vacate the existing plats. And then according to Alachua County, the clerk of courts, those plats are still valid. They would just need to be basically constructed, and they would be available to be sold. So just how we got here today. We've been working on this project with the city staff for, I'd say about a year and a half now, going through different iterations of the master plan, as well as different iterations of parks and open space, the feel of the neighborhood, roadway design standards, utility design standards, infrastructure upgrades, and those sort of things. And so just to give a little brief history of how we ended up where we are today. So this was the original layout we proposed. Believe this was early 2021, with a maximum of 2,500 lots of various sizes, the smallest lot size being 40, and then all the way up to 70, with multifamily and age-restricted units as well. Now, through the course of this process, we understood that it was not the desire of the city to have 40-foot wide lots. So that got us to our second revised concept of eliminating the 40-foot wide lots with still the maximum total units of 2,500. And then we increased one of the lot sizes to 80. So we kind of shifted the spectrum a little bit going up. And then we discussed putting a cap on the number of multifamily units, age-restricted units for apartments and then senior living facilities. Then we went through some more discussion with staff, the character of the roads, the alignment of the roads. So then we ended up on this approved or agreed upon master plan with the city staff with a maximum density of 2,000 units, which include both single family and multifamily. So we're requesting for 1,437 single family units with a maximum of 250 multifamily units and 200 senior living units. And the senior living could be either a facility or age-restricted apartments for the seniors. Now, the lot sizes we were restricting to 70-foot wide. That would be the lowest, smallest width, with 80s and 100s sprinkled through. So the lot sizes are what you can see spread out through the development in the different shades of the tan and brown. We are still proposing a 25-foot buffer around the entire property. On top of it, we are not providing a connection to Tillman Acres or to the Springted subdivisions to the south. Now the roadway alignments, we worked out with staff to align with their future plans for streets and roadway connections. So that's how we ended up with our connections to the external properties. This is in alignment with city staff's vision for the city for roadway connectivity. On top of it, both PDs, the proposed amendment, as well as the existing proposed land area up in the northeast corner for the school board. We've had discussions with the school board. The school board is interested. We've actually increased that acreage compared to the previous PD to 35 acres, so it could be a elementary / middle school. And the school board is willing to accept the donation of the land for future expansion or construction of a school. Because they understand that the city's the current schools are getting close to capacity. So this would hopefully help alleviate that with the ability of the school board to construct new facilities within the city. So infrastructure improvements. Now, any infrastructure improvements that would be required with this development would be funded by the developer. So off-site roadway improvements, utility extensions, on-site roadway improvements, utilities would all be part of the development costs that the developer would take on. So the infrastructure improvements would not be a burden onto the city itself. In addition to it, we have conversations with Alachua County and the state to determine if any of their roadways need any improvements as well. The project will be served by city utilities, water and sewer. We understand that the city's going through a process right now of a wastewater expansion, which will provide extra capacity for the city and serve this project as well. Now, as far as the water side goes, the city has ample capacity for potable water and are not needing to change their water use permit as a cause of this project. So what that means is that the amount of water that the city will be pulling out of using their wells will stay as is based on their current permit. So there would be no adverse impacts to the aquifer or the springs or anything like that with the development.
We'll afford you the same respect when you're up here. Thank you.
On top of it, to help with the reuse of water, we've been in discussions with city staff about extending what we call effluent lines or reuse lines from the wastewater treatment plant to irrigate the development. So the potable water wells would not be used to irrigate landscaping, yards, that sort of thing. We'd be using the effluent that's produced from the wastewater treatment plant to help the city with a way to get rid of that water instead of using spray fields or those sort of things. And then the development will not have any wells or septic systems at all. So with this, I will let you, Elizabeth.
Good evening, Board. I'm Elizabeth Manley, landscape architect. I have been sworn in. I'm with Manley Design. We're a local landscape architecture practice, and we're assisting Jay Brown's group with parks and trail design, and then eventually landscape and irrigation design. So it's a big priority of this project to promote an active lifestyle and offer many types of recreation, especially given the housing mix that's proposed. We're going to have a huge spectrum of ages, so there's been a lot of talk and preparation already with how to best integrate parks within the development and throughout the development and provide a wide variety of park types. So this is the same master plan we just saw in the previous slide, and I want everyone to focus, given that we're focusing on parks, focus on the green areas. Those are all the proposed parks and open spaces throughout the community. The blue are retention ponds. We're anticipating that all of those will be dry retention, so that's just more open space that can be used during dry times, very quickly after storm events. So all of this breaks down into, as you can see, a very well-distributed and integrated parks and trails network throughout the entire community. 10% minimum is required, but we've gone beyond that because of this focus. There are 24 acres of dedicated parks. We also have about 20 acres of just extra open space. We then have the stormwater basins that were mentioned. We have the perimeter buffer that's included, and that's totaling up to about 22%, so much higher than that 10% minimum. As mentioned, there's this wide variety of park types being proposed. Those are going to include community-wide parks that are a little bit larger, a little bit more heavy on active recreational elements. We've been coordinating with the city's parks director in terms of what some community needs may be that could be fulfilled here. The Parks Network will also include neighborhood parks and smaller pocket parks, so again, a nice diversity to really meet the needs. There we go. So when we talk about parks and different types, I just thought some images may be helpful. So again, the spectrum is from community parks with more active elements like sports courts, as we see here on the bottom left, pickleball, tennis, maybe some basketball like in the middle here, but also a mix of aquatic elements, so maybe a splash pad, a pool, a community pool, a combination. Probably associated with an amenity center. Obviously, that would be one of the larger parks of the community. But throughout, areas for just general recreation, like the guys playing pickup soccer there, that could be a dry retention pond. It's that kind of large open space that's just going to be throughout the neighborhood. Other areas just for general picnic, some of those smaller pocket parks, areas to walk the dogs, and of course, a lot of playgrounds. We've started working on what these park types could be in terms of a prototypical and trying to really look at what will fit within those areas designated as parks throughout the community. Here's just one bubble diagram, pretty early design where we are starting to think about what things go well together, what should the principles be throughout the community for designing parks and trails. In the master plan, again, remembering all the green and blue throughout. There'll be some large boulevard streets as the main collectors in the development. Those will have trails associated with those that will be off-road. Those are tying into the sidewalk networks, everything looping around and looping into the neighborhood parks and then larger community parks like this. So one of the guiding principles is making very clear neighborhood connections, both pedestrian connections in and vehicular connections into the parks, putting all the parking on the outside so the center of the park is very safe and usable. Here we see just a mix of the aquatic center associated with an amenity center. That's in that upper left-hand corner. We're seeing tennis courts or pickleball courts that would be associated with the amenity center, but open to all. Everything is designed around existing trees to remain. That's a big focus of this project as well. And then this large center circle, that's existing or proposed stormwater. That would be a dry pond, integrating it in with this overall plan. So we've got an aquatic center here behind the amenity center, a large playground with picnic around it, and then a soccer field. It wouldn't be striped that way. It's just an open field That could be used for pickup games. It could be used for league play if you've got a Pop Warner team or so. So just a lot of flexibility, focusing on this wide spectrum of park types.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So I know a lot of the topic of conversation too is what type of homes will be constructed. So a lot of what we call the local builders are gathering interest in this, and we're working on securing their interest. This development will not be a national builder like D.R. Horton or Miranda. It will be local builders either in the Alachua County, Marion County area, or stretching out to Orlando or Jacksonville. So they'll be custom home builders for the most part. And these are just an example of some home builders that have shown interest, and then the type of homes that we're looking for, as well as these architectural criteria as part of the PD ordinance. So in working with staff, we're just making sure that the character of the development matches the city, as well as the character is not monotonous just through the same type of house over and over again. So that's the architectural style, and we've worked that out with the city staff as well, going back and forth. Now, we'll be opening to questions. Just to reiterate, the existing development has over 2,000 homes that are currently entitled. We're requesting that we lower those in the proposed amendment, as well as the total number of single-family homes just with the existing plat is more than what we're proposing in this PD amendment. So from an intensity standpoint, we're actually requesting an amendment to lower the intensity, but then create a more open, walkable development. And all the parks that Elizabeth mentioned within the master plan will be within a half-mile walk of every single house within the development. And several of them will be open to the public. So the development will be part of the city and not just its isolated self. So thank you. That's all we have. And we'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Do you want to present before?
I was just going to present some more specifics of the PD and the surrounding zoning and land use, and just a little bit of extra information. Some of it's repetitive, so I'll just scan through that really quickly. I'm Ashley Stefanos, the city manager. Again, Chris has already shown the location, which is north of Northwest 155th Avenue, south of Northwest 174th Avenue, east of US 41, and west of Northwest 222nd Street on 687 acres. The future land use, no future land use amendment is proposed because it meets our current future land use. Zoning. For a zoning to be compatible, it does not need to have the exact zoning that is being requested on all sides. It just needs one side that is substantial touching it. So on the north end, we have the R2, R3, and C2 in Ag County. And the R2 is 7,500 square foot lots, R3 is 4,500 square foot lots, and C2 is 7,500 square foot lots. So as you can see, this is a compatible use. Again, the lot sizes are 7,000, 8,000, and 10,000 square feet. Lots, the minimum home size is 1,500 square feet. And just so you know, in the existing Tillman Estates PD, there is no minimum home size, so it would default to the city minimum home size, which is 1,000 square feet. This PD also has substantial residential design standards that include building materials, design features, and building articulation. Has house repetition requirements, so the same home cannot be in front of you, behind you, across from you. It has minimum facade elevation, so you have to have 10 different elevations for every 100 homes, and they require approval of plan board. So all elevations need to be approved by the plan board, which the current Tillman PD does not have. In addition, it has substantial landscape requirements for each home, including native Florida species. The medium-density residential provision in the PD is for the multifamily and the assisted living, and there are design standards for those buildings as well to prevent blank walls and monolithic sides, as well as, sorry, I got something in my throat, distinct building models. So you cannot have the same building over and over. There has to be, you can't have more than 2 or 3 building models before bringing another one. And since this is more larger buildings, they require approval by the city commission, as well as increased landscape requirements. Subdivision standards, again, 60 acres for parks, recreation, and open space, and each park is within a 10-minute walk of each residential home, which was very important. We redid the plan several times to get the 10-minute walk. The primary community park must be under construction by the 300th building permit. So you're not going to be able to put all these homes in there, and people are wondering, where's the park? We are requiring it be built in a time period that the kids will be able to enjoy it. And a minimum of 34 acres is being set aside for a school, and I think we're going to work on getting that to 35 acres. And land is being set aside for additional public facilities, including a police and fire station, and a maximum of 3 acres for non-residential commercial purposes. The subdivision standards, it will be served, as Chris said, by central water and sewer, and the roadways will be constructed with curb and gutter. Sidewalks are required on both sides of the residential roads, which is not the case in all subdivisions, and on the interior collector roads, as well as the neighborhood trails. They have to be provided throughout the subdivision, looped to provide interconnectivity to the school site, parks, open space amenities, and commercial area. So everything, people will be able to get around safely, and especially to the school. You won't have people riding bikes in the streets. And the sidewalks have to be a minimum 8 feet width, which is important. We kept the 25-foot buffer as in the previous PD, and in the subdivision, not just the homes and the multifamily, but the subdivision has to have landscape standards as well, which, if approved upon, after the developer builds the subdivision, we do what is called a walk, and we inspect the subdivision, and we make sure that everything in the landscape plans for the subdivision that are approved by the city commission are there, and it's in good condition. And we ensure we have a 2-year maintenance bond that we ensure that everything is flourishing. If it dies, they have to put it back. In the retention and detention areas, can you go back one time, Kevin? We require 1 large tree to be planted for each 50 linear feet of the perimeter around the retention detention areas to kind of make them a little nicer. And we have put great emphasis on the subdivision entrances, so they're not just a sign, that there's additional features, and it's very welcoming when you go into the subdivision. Finally, I wanted to kind of explain more some of the things that have been on social media. I wanted to set straight what the truth is and how this works. So currently there is a plat on the subdivision. It's called the Tamiami plat. And it is from a very long time ago, before maybe any of us were here. And there are 1,440 homes that are entitled on that plat. So what that means is the developer can come in with construction plans, and if it meets city regulations, we are required to allow them to go ahead and build the roads. And so once they build those and the rest of the infrastructure, they are buildable lots. Those are 50-foot width wide lots. Okay, so as you can see, and did you have on your slide the location of them? They're all in one very condensed area. And on top of that is the Tillman Estates PD. Again, the Tillman Estates PD, it is a good PD. If the Tamiami, that's hard to say, if it had been vacated. That plat has not been vacated. It is an entitled lot. The city cannot do a city initiated, decide to city initiate, vacate the lot without the potential of getting in legal action because it's taking entitlement away from the developer. And 99%, in my opinion, of developers are not going to take an entitlement away. So, so then you have 800 homes that can be built with the Tillman PD, which there was one version in 2004, and then in 2005, a Tillman PD with a master plan on it that people, I understand that people in social media think that's a plat. It's not. There is a master plan, and there have not been phases of that master plan platted. So the Tillman PD overlays the plat, and that PD doesn't have a minimum home size. It doesn't have the setback requirements aren't very clear. They don't have design standards. There's not house repetition requirements. There are not minimum facade elevations. It's a good PD, but it's missing a lot, and it leaves a lot of exposure for the city and for the people who live near the subdivision. So staff's recommendation is approval. We feel that this new PD protects the city. It's a nicer development, and we think that it will be very beneficial, and it is, the number of homes is comparable to the number in the original plat.
Thank you very much. While they have them up here, you want to ask some questions that you've got along the way? Yes. Before we let the public get, okay, go ahead.
Could you pinpoint for everyone the entrance exit points on the map? And how many there are, what roads they affect?
So we'll have a connection to Northwest 174th Avenue, 2741, and a future connection just below, if you can see the red kind of pinkish color in the northeast, just below the school. There's a connection to the east, which goes up right now to Mr. Tillman's property that he's currently living at. And then down on the bottom southeast corner, we have a connection to the east. And all those align to the city's plan. There is one more, let's see, just to the east of the Tillman Acres property down on the southwest, kind of in the middle of the lighter tan area. It's to the south to some vacant property that, and now these connections were worked out with city staff to align with their vision for the future roadway planning for the city.
There's 3 planned and 1 future one? Is that what it's showing there?
There's 3 future and 2 planned.
So 174.
174th and then 2741.
What about 222?
No.
Street? That would be the south. It looks like there's a place there, or I couldn't tell from the dimensions there if that was a road or not.
You talking about down there by the little park in the far
Yes.
right-hand corner?
Yes.
Is that connecting anywhere?
No, it is not.
Okay. In the northern or the eastern exit, what road would that affect?
That would be a future road to come all the way through the east side.
Does it connect to an existing road there?
That is correct.
Okay. Second question I have is, I know, one of the questions people are going to have is about the water. And you had mentioned that basically there would be no interruption, there would be no, this is what I heard, that there's no interference as far as additional water needs. Is that what you were saying?
Yes. So the
Could you
city-
explain that?
Yes, I can. So the existing capacity of the city's water system, the water plant, has capacity above and beyond to provide for the development. Now, unlike the wastewater treatment plant where they're going through an current expansion to provide capacity, the water system has capacity in it to it right now from the plant itself. I know the city recently just went through permitting process to add a well to the water treatment plant, but that was not to provide extra capacity. That was to provide redundancy, just in case one of the wells goes out of operation. It's good practice to always have at least 2 wells with your system flowing. Now, what we'll have to evaluate based off elevations is just water pressure for within the development. So we may have to add some sort of elevated water tank or a booster pump or something like that to increase the water pressure through the development. But that would be something that would only affect the residents of the development, not the city itself. Hopefully that answered your question.
The last part of your statement there, who would pay for that elevated tank or that booster pump station? Would that be included in the cost of the development, or is that a cost to the city?
That would be a cost for the developer to make his development viable and to provide adequate fire pressure or water pressure to meet the minimum requirements for home use as well as fire protection.
What is probably the average cost of the home in there?
That I would hate to speculate, just because they keep, the market keeps moving up and down.
Rough idea, not going to hold you to it.
I would say anywhere in the high 2s all the way up to, I would say millions, depending on style of the house, lot size, that sort of thing.
Okay, because I know that either the repump station or an elevated tank is going to cost a lot of money.
Unfortunately, it's part of doing business.
I understand. Where on the map would you possibly be donating land for the fire station and police department?
So right now,
I don't see that set aside anywhere.
It's a little small on the map, but it's up there in the northwest corner, a little red area. At the entrance. Towards the entrance.
Okay.
That would be an ideal location for emergency vehicles to get out to serve other surrounding subdivisions, as well as this itself. Now, that has not been solidified with the city. That's something that is in fluid motion of the location, but the actual donation of it is part of the ordinance.
And my next question is with all the walkways and the parks in there, part of that will be just for the community itself, and part of it will be open to the general public? Is that what I understood?
The intention is to have, all of the pathways that are, in public right-of-ways, that's all access. Now, the parks themselves, we've been in discussions with the city about which parks, what type of parks. As Elizabeth mentioned, discussing with the parks director to figure out, when we get to that stage, what amenities will be needed within the parks to help subsidize the development. But the parks would be open to both public and the residents within the development.
I have a question for you on multi-family units. I didn't see any examples as to, how large these would be, how tall they would be, how many there would be. You indicated it was going to supply 200 people. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the maximum is 250 units, so that's the most multifamily units we could have based
So
on.
more like townhouses, or are you talking about apartment buildings? Are you
So it
talking about-
would depend. If it's a typical apartment complex, 3 stories would be the max. Now, multifamily units are considered attached units as well, so that would come out of that 250 maximum. So it would really just depend on the current nature of the market.
Yeah, and if I can say something, so that would come to the plan board and then the city commission to approval at the time they were ready to move forward. So then y'all would get to see the site plan and renderings and everything like y'all are used to seeing.
Hey, that leads to my next question. As far as the non-resident areas, and I assume from the descriptions, we're talking about pharmacies, doctor offices, business buildings that would be, put in place. Would they also be
Oh, yes. That,
approved final of the board?
the same way as any commercial development that comes in the city, site plan, renderings, all of that.
So it would not be the complete discretion of the subdivision?
No. In fact, this is probably the only subdivision where everything will come again. Every home elevation, everything.
And they all do fall under the architectural standards that are in the ordinance.
Currently, the only place in the city with architectural standards is the highway enhancement zone.
Two more questions for you. Who will be paying for the water meters in this subdivision?
It would be part of the impact fees.
Impact fees,
Part of
okay.
the building permit when they
Okay.
build the house.
And the other question, this is just for clarification. Under D, development standards, number 2, we're talking about right-of-ways and streets. What are speed tables?
So speed tables are a form or version of a speed hump. They're wider and they're more abrupt. So that way it actually forces the car to slow down. But then when you get up to the top, you feel like you're on a flat spot and then the vehicle moves down.
Please bear with me. I'm a terrible note taker, so I'm gonna have a hard time deciphering this, and I never pass my PhD, so we have to go from there. So the minimum lot size that you guys are proposing is 70 foot,
That is correct.
and you guys went with the existing currently that's right there now. You can go as low as 40 foot.
50.
Oh, 50? Okay.
Yes.
All right. As your road connections, I see that it doesn't go on to 222 here and stuff, but from the city point of view and services, isn't that kind of a disservice for, let's say, if there's a fire station nearby to be able to get, they'd have to drive all the way north, come across, and get back down to when they could just cut through the subdivision? Why are we blocking that? I mean, it's a part of the city. It's not a gated community, correct?
You're correct. What access point are you?
The one on the
speaking-
far right down at the bottom, doesn't that run right up to 222?
Yes, but it was, we have 2 east connections on there. There's, oh,
Yeah, right there.
oh, why don't we keep going?
Yeah, what's the reason behind that? I mean, I'm just thinking for emergency services, if you live literally right across the
Yeah.
road there, and the fire department gets a call, they gotta drive north, and then over,
Yeah.
and then back down. That's an extra 5 or 6 minutes to
We're
response
gonna,
time.
so this is a concept plan,
Okay.
so we're gonna look at everything again as each phase comes forward to plating. So we'll take a second look at that, but there were a number of reasons for that, including, who we are likely to be able to get easements from. As we move forward, there's a bunch of stuff that goes into why those decisions were made.
Okay.
I'm sitting here trying to be quiet, but you're being fed information that is not.
Okay,
This day before you-
I understand, but you can, there will be time, we'll let you guys up, and I'll listen to everything, I promise you. And you can rebut anything that they're saying.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I got that one there, okay. Now, in the school, a couple years, or maybe it wasn't even that long ago, they were, the school, we were worried about the school with some other subdivisions that were going in, and there was a big talk of, well, the school can't hold it. And they had a school person sitting here saying, well, 40 or some odd % of the people that are in that school are not from the High Springs area. They're bused over here. So I know that we're talking about adding a school, but the school board would just have to relocate the ones that are further away in the first place, is what I'm thinking. So I just wanted to make that on a statement. I don't know if that's true or not. But now you said there's no wells. That means in the future, if somebody decides they want to put in a private well, that won't be allowed, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you're going to have a gravity-fed sewer system to a lift station, correct?
Yes, there'll be multiple.
Okay. Now, you said there'd be sidewalks all on the major roads, or is that on all the roads in there?
All the roads.
Are the sidewalks going to be illuminated or something like that?
The streets will be illuminated, and then any pathways that deviate off the roadway will have some form of bollard lighting.
Okay, and you said before that this is, since it's not a gated community, that all the parks are available to all the residents of the city.
Correct.
Okay. And the different, I think you talked about the townhouses and duplexes or whatever it might be, and you said that you could, under our current plan, we can go as high as 3 stories in High Springs?
3 stories for the multifamily. Yes.
Multifamily, but only 2 stories for residential homes?
Yes.
Okay, but they would have to come to us if they wanted to put something 3 stories tall?
They have to come to y'all for anything.
Okay,
The way this is worded.
all right. And you mentioned curbs in here. Are we talking the swale-style curb or an actual raised 3 to 4 inch curb?
It'll vary depending on the roadway type. Typical subdivision streets that the houses front will have the Miami curb, which is the valley curb that you're talking about. The boulevards and main roadways will have type F curb or the elevated curb.
Okay. I know this is in phases, what's 5 phases?
Well, it's a more than a 5-phase development.
Yeah.
It's going to be a multi-phase, multi-year. I would say 15 years to get it to the point of being built out, maybe longer depending on market conditions.
Okay. Does the city have an estimation of the revenue this would generate the city?
I haven't gotten an estimate just because that's not supposed to be a part of the
Okay.
decision-making process.
Okay. Thank you very much. You got any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Any discussion up here? Okay, we'd like you to orderly, if you want to speak, raise your hand, we'll call you up, identify yourself, and then you can speak. You have 3 minutes. You got the buzzer? Please, at the end of the buzzer, just stop. I know everybody wants to say more, but please stop and let the next person come up. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Chair, before we get there, one of the items that we need to take care of procedurally is any ex parte communications that you may have had or the other members of the board. Why don't we run through that real
Okay.
quick, if you don't mind?
Correct.
And have you had, Mr. Chair, have you had any communications about this project outside of the hearing today?
No, just the fact that it was coming up.
Okay.
The only communication I had was with Christie today, picking up the documents to review.
The only communication I've had is basically getting more information from Christie on updates to the information that we would receive.
As our chair said, there's a 3-minute time limit for your comments, and we welcome your comments. That's part of the democratic process that we undertake. The city, a long time ago, established rules of procedure. And one of the things that we typically do when we have a city commission meeting is that we invoke the meeting with a invocation. And the pastor that we had for many years would say that we can disagree but not be disagreeable. And I think that that is encompassed in our rules of civility. And I'll read you from our rules of procedure. Right now, the city of High Springs encourages citizen participation in the democratic process and recognizes and protects the right of freedom of speech afforded to all, meaning that everyone that's here tonight, you can disagree with anything that's said, and we protect that right, and we cherish that right of your ability to have free speech and disagree without being disagreeable. The commissioners, the planning and zoning board members, and city officials and members of the public are respectfully to communicate in accordance with the commissioner's rules of procedure. Persons shall speak only when recognized by yourself, Mr. Chair, and at that time they shall refrain from engaging in personal attacks or derogatory offensive language. Comments from citizens being made at a time other than the time period in which you come to the microphone and speak, you should only focus on the issues at hand. If there are outbursts, that will not be tolerated, and those who do not conduct themselves in a respectful and lawful manner will be subject to removal as outlined by the Commissioner's Rules of Procedures. So that's what's encompassed in our Rules of Civility. It's something that we've had in place for a long time, Mr. Chair, and I just thought before we get started this evening that we'd remind everybody of that.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Go ahead, sir.
Hi, I'm John Hagland. I'm from Springstead. I live there with my wife, Marlene. We moved here from Miami, where we had, our next door neighbor was maybe 30 feet from house to house. Very good suites, by the way. I've been listening to the details of this planned addition to our community, and I realized that this is really actually for us, people that moved here and built a house and moved out into the country. This is kind of a doubling of the population of High Springs. If you have 3,000 homes and multiple people in the homes, and then you have another 30 on 142nd Street, that is something that some of us find worrisome, because we're worried about the infrastructure and how this is, how the traffic is going to be in High Springs, how, for instance, they went from having a 60-foot buffer for Springstead, and it went to 25 feet. So some of our people, when the first meeting I went to, which was about a year ago, I guess, it was 60 feet, and now it's 25 feet. So some of the people that live at the end of our cul-de-sac are worried about, they looked out on Tillman Acres that was completely empty for many years, and now all of a sudden they're going to be looking at a big landscape there. So I think that we're looking at it from 60,000 feet, and you guys are looking at it from a very small thing. I appreciate this forum because I think that this is a good way to go about it, but there are a lot of other people from Springstead that want to speak, and their concerns, I'm going to let them speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Travis, 15337 Northwest 214th Terrace. My question to you, I guess it's you, is
Directions toward me.
Questions?
the entrance
Ma'am,
on the
excuse
east-
me. What you do, I'm sorry, it's hard to see where the voice is coming from. The way we do it here and in our commission meetings is that any questions that you have go to our chair. So if you have any comments or questions, it goes to the chair. And then our chair can decide if he wants to direct that question to Mr. Potts or anybody else. So that's
Okay.
the procedure. That's how we do it.
And could you repeat your name one more time? I only caught your last name.
Drew, D-R-U, Travis. You're welcome.
Kevin, could you reset her time? All right.
My one question is the entrance or exit onto 154th and Northwest 222 Street. Now, I came before the planning board or the commission last time and spoke about this, and now I see that it's a major roadway into this development. That's my first question, and I'd like to know how many low-income housing units will be part of this development, and where will they be located?
Chris, do you want to answer that? I do not have the specifics on low income. I'm not the one who, I do the square footage, what they look like. Chris, can you answer that? Is that okay, Chair?
Does the,
Yes, you can, go ahead and answer if you have an answer for, if
I
we'll
have one
pause.
more question.
Okay, well, go ahead and ask the next ones then.
are all the utilities underground?
Yes.
And who's going to benefit from the low-income housing? Does the city get the government money, or does the developer get the government money?
As far as I know, there's no low income that involves any government funding. Do you want to talk to that more specifically?
Do you have any more questions on those?
No, I think that's enough.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, and then he'll answer those for you.
So, Mr. Chair, the city manager is correct. There's no HUD funding, federal funding, or government funding for low-income housing. The development will not have low-income housing. The intention for the development is to be able to provide housing for all ranges of income. So the working class, like firefighters, policemen, nurses, and then upwards. So there's no designated low-income housing or HUD housing that'll be supported by federal funds.
Okay, did that answer your questions?
Yes, and the entrance
Okay. I don't see an entrance going on to 222 at all. Oh, you mean on 174th?
No, south of that.
Is there one?
No, the property all to the east is privately owned.
Okay.
So we have to go through other parcels.
Okay, currently, ma'am, there's nothing planned there. It stops, and there's a privately owned piece of property there, so it won't be making a connection.
Okay, I talked to the surveyor when he was surveying, and he said that was going to be the entrance to that development.
I guess the surveyor was wrong. Am I
That's
correct?
not the entrance to the development.
Okay,
That's
yeah,
correct.
okay. Next.
Sir, my name's David Boyette, and I live at 174th, where y'all have surrounded it with 2 schools. I purchased this property in 2011, and before I did, I came to this city and pulled your plans that you say were approved in 2004, and they were not anything like these plans. The 2005 plan, I was told, was never approved by the city, which is the PD plan that y'all are talking about, that y'all are trying to revise. I have copies of all that, and it was never approved. If you're saying it is approved, this is not that same plan. It is not even close to it. And when you talk about the developments from 1925, those do not cover all this property. It only covers one small area behind Tillman Acres.
So you are correct. The Tamiami.
Okay, if I may finish, ma'am? Okay. So my property right now is appraised between $550,000 and $600,000. You're talking about bringing homes in from $200,000 to $1 million. You're not going to build $1 million home on a 70-foot wide lot. Not in High Springs. It's not going to happen. Let's be honest and realistic to people. The second thing is, when you talk about these roads that you've put a stop to, those roads are future to run across the Tillman property that Mr. Sonny Tillman owns. That's why when she mentioned about the surveyor, that's exactly what they were doing. That is a whole nother phase that is being planned but not presented to the people. The other thing that I want to talk about, when you talk about these schools, it looks good on paper. How many people have been out there and looked see where these schools that they're proposing, the donated land? It is in the flood zone, and your major Duke power lines run right through the middle of it. So this looks great on paper, but if you go out there and look, you're not going to be able to put schools through the major power lines of Duke. My kids are grown. I've got grandkids now. So the schools don't affect me in that aspect, but it does affect the future generations of this community. And that's what we need to be looking out for. I understand we see dollar signs and a bunch of tax dollars coming in so we can grow the community. I understand that part of it, but we have to look at the human part of it. and what is important for the community. When the 2004 plan was approved, it was similar to Timberland Acres. They were 1, 2, 5, 6, 7 acre tracts that were spread out through all this property. And when we talk about access down here, at your direction, whichever you call it, to the bottom right here, where she was talking about 222 and 154th, that
Sir?
area down there.
I'm sorry, the timer
Yeah,
went off.
we have to stop you now,
It's
but I got a question on that while he was.
Mr. Chair, can I clarify something
go
for
ahead.
you real quick? So flood zone,
Yeah.
the school site is not in a FEMA flood zone. There is only a little bit in the city that is a flood zone, and it is only along the river. So the school site does not have a flood zone on it.
Okay, but there is a power line that cuts through both of those two properties, correct?
Fine.
Okay. All right. Also, then from what he said, I got a question on the, I do know, like I said, I noticed the roads ending here. Has that even been broached on the road extensions to like from the one road at the top all the way to 222, or is that, you know?
Yeah, so we looked at what staff and the developers, engineer, and his team, what we thought would be the best access points at this point. Keep in mind, this is a concept plan, and so we still have to go through traffic impact analysis at plating. So the access points can change. So, you know, there's a difference between the plating and the zoning. So this is the zoning, and this is a master plan. It's a concept plan that we still are working some of those smaller, you know, some of those details out.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then,
Sir, if I may,
no, I'm sorry.
I wouldn't.
I'm sorry, please, for everyone else, I have
Sure,
to do the same
thank
thing. This could actually, in essence, come before us again and things be flipped around, like the schools could be on the other side.
It's mainly going to follow the same
Layout.
layout
Okay.
and look. It has to be comparable. We can't completely change it, but there may be some tweaks based on where they can get easements, the traffic impact analysis, you know, what roads might need to be, you know,
Improved.
widened and improved. You know, it might make sense to move it a little to the right or a little to the left or move it up one street. So some of that stuff can still change
Okay.
at plating.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
What's the time I got?
3 minutes.
Okay. Darling, keep my time. My name is Rick Buxton. I'm in construction and I believe in development, but it has to be done the right way. I hear a lot of these people talk about, me and my wife came here 35 years ago, and the reason we came here was to get out of the congestion of being in town and all. But I understand development, but it has to be done the right way. My biggest concern, and I've heard Elizabeth talk, and I've actually done work with Elizabeth at the University of Florida, great people. But my concern is anybody right now that's lived out here for several years, you go to get on 441, and the traffic has doubled in the last 2 years. Anybody here that drives out, so what is this going to do to it? What are we doing to make sure that we don't do like Gainesville, Archer Road, Newberry Road. When you try to leave there in the evening times, you're going to spend 45 minutes just to travel 5 miles to get to the I-75. So that's my concern, and would like to hear that that is being looked at and that is being considered, not just the financial part of it.
Right, so.
Do you have another
Sorry.
question besides that? Or do you want her to answer that?
No,
I mean, because it's using your time. That's the only reason why I asked.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
So at plating, and Chris, if you want to add any of this, you can. At plating, we do traffic impact analysis and other studies based on the number of homes that are coming in at each phase. And at that time, we work with, you know, if the roadways are going to be impacted. Obviously, depending on how they phase it, different roadways will be impacted. And we don't recommend the first preliminary plat come through until all those details are worked out and we make sure that there's going to be adequate capacity on the roads. So just because this whole thing is approved right now
No.
doesn't mean they're gonna, as you know, they're gonna start slopping down all these homes. There's still
But
processes for each phase.
I really would like to say too, I mean, are we going to develop the thoroughfares or the road system prior to putting the new houses here.
Yes.
That's the right way to do it, not, as I said, Gainesville has done. They develop, and the road systems, it's a nightmare.
We actually just worked on our comprehensive plan, and as part of that, we updated our major thoroughfare plan, and then we also engaged a consultant to do an impact fee study. So prior to this development going in, we'll have roadway, water, sewer, parks, and general facility roadway impact fees all adopted that will help pay for these improvements.
Okay, I don't know if you answered me, if you were going to
Well,
do it before.
Okay.
I mean, to do what you're doing, you should do that first.
And we are. That's what I'm saying. We're taking all the proper steps, and those are the steps to take.
Okay.
Is
Right.
to plan for it and financially plan both.
Okay,
Right. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Yeah, because I'll agree with all you. I mean, what used to be is you just drive right on through town without even thinking. Is now there's traffic jams. I mean, it's horrible. And I moved here just after the pig house incident, where they were planning on building a bypass, and how that fell through. So I don't know the future plan on.
The people are not going to trip building the roads until we know that people are coming.
Right.
And so as each phase comes, that's when we work with the other entities. So we've already started preliminary discussions, but you get into the more detailed discussions after, if the PD is approved, because you're not going to put all this money into too far extensive studies if it's not approved.
Go ahead.
Just to answer a couple of questions, going back to the school question too, if I can. So the school board evaluates the developability of land. They just don't accept anything that's given to them. So they'll go through their own extensive process of determining if the location is correct, as well as how many acres, any constraints like the Duke easement. But Christie is right, there is no designated floodplain in that area. Now for the roadway question, as the city manager mentioned, when we get further down the road, hopefully we'll have a traffic impact or traffic analysis. It won't just focus on the roadways that surround the development. It'll focus on a broader ring showing, like 441, other roadways that this development could potentially impact. And based on those traffic numbers is when certain roadway improvements would be triggered. So since 441 and 27 are state roadways, we'll have to go through the process of permitting with the state. And if any roadway improvements are required and triggered during phase developments, those improvements will have to be put in place before the development will be considered allowed to be sold for homes or platting or anything like that. So hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you. You were going to ask something? No. Which is also brings up the question, even if the study shows that roads should be expanded, part of High Springs' problem is state and federal highway or roads running through here.
Right.
Or are they bound by the same thing we are?
Well, then we work with the state on the improvements that are needed, and just like we do anything else. I mean, we work on all of our commercial projects with the state or county, depending what road it is, and we don't allow projects to move forward until all the details are worked out.
Okay.
So if they say, no, you can't do this, and then there's not going to be capacity, then we have to hold up the next phase until we work that out.
Okay.
Yeah, the roadway system is similar to the utility aspect with DOT, is that they have a level of service that the roadways have to maintain. And if they look at all the projects that are, they don't just look at it in a vacuum. So if other projects have come for them, you have to add on top of that and add on top of that, even if those developments aren't built out.
I have one question. When you plan this, usually you have I know this is like a 20-year plan, but if you were going to break this down into percentages, can you do that? In other words, let's say on 5-year increments, what's it going to take? I mean, what do you think the growth will be over that period of time?
So I would say you would probably see between maybe 100 to 150 homes being sold a year. So, I mean, that's actually on the higher end of the scale. Now things are slowing down, so you probably drop to 50 to 75 a year. So it really, I would say about a year ago, you were seeing closer in the 150 to 200 range just because of the market conditions. But now all that's going back to being normalized, so it would be, I would say a safe range is probably 75 to 125 a year.
Very quick question. Is that power line, is that a major transmission line?
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody else? Yes, let her go first. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Janet Evans. I'd like to read a letter to our Mr. City Attorney. I'd like to say that the people here are facts, not opinions. At what point in time are you going to start fighting for the people in this town? Regarding this Bridlewood development, the original plan submitted allowed for 800 more homes on the 635 acres. This phased in over 4 to 5 years would be okay with the projected repairs to our infrastructure. Now, with asking this amendment to the PD, asking for 2,000, that would be approximately 7,000 more people. We would more than double the population of High Springs and overwhelm all city infrastructure, including the roads. We have a case where one property owner is trying to redefine our whole city. He wants to sell and make money. We as a group have a right to preserve our identity. While I realize that your wheelhouse is not land use law, our community expects your efforts to reflect the atmosphere we strive to preserve. If you are not up to the task, then you have a duty to step down and allow our city to retain an attorney that is more philosophically aligned with the people here.
Thank you very much. Okay, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Pedro Sotelo. I'm a resident here in High Springs. We've been talking about this development and planning. One of the things that I've been thinking about in planning and development is infrastructure, but of one kind, safety. What about our police departments? What about our emergency services? Are we gonna double that? And who's gonna pay for it? Is the company doing this development going to subsidize to double the police department, get better equipment? Are the schools are going to have the safety that requires? The roads here, how are we going to handle all of these particular things as it's been said already, doubled the people that lives in this small town? Nothing wrong with growing, but if we're going to do it, those are areas that are very important, and I always see the same thing when growing towns. We grow, but we leave the services behind, and then the taxpayers are the one that have to pay for them. I never heard of a development say, oh, I'm going to pay for the new police department or fire station. But in this case, I think since we have been doing this since the 1900s, why don't we ask if this development is going to make a lot of money, putting some of his money into this part two, because I'm sure the police that are here can tell, they're probably thinking, how are we going to cover that area with potentially 4,000, 6,000, 8,000 more people? That's a question for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you on that. I'll just let you know that I moved up here 16 years ago when 2 cars at a light was considered a traffic jam. And it was a joke at the time, but it actually was true. And I worked for the fire department for 9 years, right across the street over here. And I think when I started, there were 5 guys that were paid. The rest were volunteers and part-timers. And what the city did with limited resources, especially with the fire department and how little they get, is we've turned, I think it's ISO rating of 4, if I correct, which is amazing for a town our size. We have ALS in this town, we've expanded our trucks, and we have, currently, how many guys are paid? Fire?
Paid. There's 4-person staffing right now, going to 5-person staff in October 1. ALS new units were pretty much stacked.
So with limited resources, we've been able to do that, and that's one of the reasons I asked earlier about the revenue, because that's what's going to fund our new fire station. I know there's plans to do a couple more stations. I mean, we have a chance to really, I mean, we're limited by where we're located at. We're up here on the far corners of Alachua, and the hospital's all the way down there, and we lose our ambulance half the day at a time. So as more as we can increase our services here, the more lives we can save. And I don't know if anything up front's going to come, other than maybe some land set aside, but the revenue that this thing will generate will definitely help fire and police. We need more officers. I'm all for our own police and fire department. That's why I came to High Springs and not Newberry and Alachua.
I'll just add one more thing that relates to this last gentleman's concerns. In this development, there are going to be impact fees. And basically, everyone that buys one of these homes or moves in there is going to pay an impact fee. And that's going to generate money to pay for a lot of what they're talking about.
No, y'all actually did my job for me. Thank you. So, but just to I will expand a little bit on the impact fees. So, the impact fees are a fee on new development only to pay for these type of services, and extensive studies are done based on our master plans and the things we need to do to be able to serve development, and that's how the calculations are made, so development pays for itself. So we have a very recent study within the last year, and impact fees will be assessed on every home in this development to help pay for some of these things.
Good evening, my name is Jonathan Blankenship. I had a question about the roads surrounding. So we can see that there's proposed future passageway across the Tillmans to a chip and seal road that's very narrow. So who's going to pay, if that phase is extended on, is that going to be part of the development, expanding that road, redeveloping that road, paving it? How are the easements going to be affected? Also, the easements on 174th, is that going to become a 4-lane? Is that going to affect the easements and the offsets? Because I know on 236 they couldn't widen it because they couldn't get approved the easements and offsets. And also where they're proposing the fire department, and that entrance is right across from my family's property that's been there since the 70s. So we're seeing that those headlights are going to be shining right into their property. They're older. The fire department's going to be going off potentially, who knows when it happens. So is that going to how's that going to affect them? Are they going to have a turn lane there that's going to widen it? So I'm curious about our road infrastructure around it. Granted, we know that the roadways are already, like you said earlier, they're jammed up. And we can't do anything about it because the Main Street's too narrow. Just everything's the way it is. So to bypass everything, how are we going to do that, and who's going to pay for it?
So it's a combination of the impact fees generated from the development, and the developer will pay for offsite improvements that are determined by the traffic impact analysis.
But how long is that developer going to be liable for those expenses?
Well, normally they pay up front is how we do it. We enter into agreements where they pay up
So
front.
say it's $2 million to do all the road infrastructure fix, allowing that the easements are, everybody agrees to push them back. Let's say it goes up in the course of the development to where there's time to do the roads, it's $10 million. Who's paying for it?
That's their responsibility.
So the developer, it's the developer's
The city does not
responsibility to continue.
pay for cost of new development. That's
Right.
on the developer.
So the developer, say this is their last build, they fold up, they're gone, are they still liable
We
for it?
have performance. We have performance bonds, and the performance bonds then will come into play, so that
So
if
they're
they leave
projecting
anything,
the future expense, because I know
It-
expenses right now have gone up 40% in the course of 2 years.
right.
So you can't really predict a 2%, 5% inflation. So how are you going to settle that one?
I understand, but as each phase goes in, then they bid it at that time. If they don't have the money to do it, then it's not done.
So are they going to bid it ahead of time?
They bid it when they're ready to construct it. They have their plat come in, their preliminary, and then their final plat, and then when they're ready to move forward is when they do their construction plans and get them approved, and then they bid it, and then they construct it.
I'm Julie Tapia Ruano. I live on 154th Place, that chip and seal road he just mentioned, also connecting to 214 and 222. We also are concerned about the possible entrance coming in to 222 at the corner of 154th Place. We have a beautiful country lane road, even though it's chip and seal. It has pedestrians and bicyclists and equestrian interests. We would never want to see that widened, lose our tree tunnel, maintain the road in good condition, but we never want to see that kind of traffic flowing through Oak Lane Plantation and Cedar Lane Plantation. It's not technically a thoroughfare, but some people try to treat it that way, but we don't want to lose that aesthetic. As to the schools, I have raised 5 children through both Alachua and High Springs schools. My youngest is at Santa Fe now, just coming out of High Springs. The schools are already overcrowded, and with all due respect, we do have to work with Alachua County, and they're not very generous with their roads, with their schools, with their fire services. We have to do it on our own. So with all due respect, I don't think that these plans might be viable based on relying on county services or county approving a school or sending the teachers. We don't even have enough teachers. My son had to change 4 classes to new teachers because they finally got some temporary help into the school system. Also, when will the platting take place, and will we be notified personally if we live adjacent to these areas? When the initial platting, if we know that that road will or will not go through? The
platting is at the developer's discretion, and so we do not send out public notices, but platting is on the agendas. So the platting, they have to meet all city regulations, and so it's not as discretionary as zoning.
Where in the map areas would the multiplexes be, or the assisted living senior facilities?
They're more internal. Do you want to show exactly, Chris, where the multifamily is and the assistant living?
Go ahead and keep asking your questions.
Okay, and the last thing is the traffic flow. Of course, we don't want to double the intersection at 174th, 441 near Boone Equipment, also at 174th and where it meets 222nd. Those are notoriously bad intersections for congestion, trying to turn left to go to High Springs School or trying to just get into general traffic on 441. Just a little farther away at 202nd is known for death and accidents. We're going to increase our traffic flow through these critical intersections, and that's a very big concern for safety, and especially if there's going to be kids, if there's sidewalks, kids on bikes and things like that. So,
Chris, do you want to respond to that?
when you talk about the figs, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Chris, go ahead and.
So the area for the multifamily that we're designating, and it's only, it's the only area that will be allowed for medium density, is basically dead center of the property, where you have those two stormwater basins that are in the center paralleling the road. To the east of that, in a little bit of a circle, is where the multifamily is. A little bit to the right of that. Yep. Right in that area is where the multifamily would be designated for. So it'd be interior to the development.
Thank you on that. So I guess it's right.
Well, you got a nicer map than me.
Colored it. So he's talking about
Right in this area.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Let me ask him a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Chris?
Chris, I got a question for you, and I know some of the people's comments from the audience. Just for clarification for all of us again, Are we going to be doing anything with Northwest 222? Is there anything in the future projected?
It would depend on the traffic analysis. So the traffic analysis looks at what roadways you're connecting to, and then what roadways those roadways connect to as they move out. So for example, we're connecting to 2741, which goes north and south. You know, we'll have to look at 441 and the surrounding roadways that tie to that. For right now, with 174th, that is an actual roadway we're connecting to. We have to look at that roadway going to 222nd to the east or to the west to 441.
So currently, you've got an access that's going to be hooked up to 174th right off the bat, and 41, 45, and where's the other one going to be?
The other ones are future.
Future. But this is kind of, I don't know, it looks kind of odd to me that you have a school right there, and what happens at school during rush hour? I mean, literally one whole intersection there will be blocked during school time.
Well,
So-
that again, it's kind of a phased development. So
Right.
hopefully by that time,
The other accesses will be
other
in?
accesses will have,
Okay.
and so those will all be outlined in the in the traffic report that'll
Okay.
come later of what roadways are needed and that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you. And next,
Good evening. I'm Annalise Brits. I'm speaking on behalf of about 15 people of Springstead community. I want to know what exactly is the identity of High Springs. I mean, you have these planning committees that keeps the historic center of town nicely historical. Obviously, you want to be known as a quaint, small, charming town. You have specific ideas about the murals. I mean, there's been all kinds of things said about the murals that's everywhere or that's on the couple of walls in town, and how that affects the way that we perceive High Springs. Most of the people that live here came here for country living. We moved out of big cities because we want to be, one, able to sleep in the dark and not have lights shining in my eyes every day I wake up and in the middle of the night with lights in my eyes. I want to be able to see the stars. I want to be able to smell the cow manure. That's what I want. That's why I moved here. You have this plat or thing that you said of Tamiami Gardens that was done way back when. Why can't it be changed? On 3 sides of it, there's residential 1 areas, zonings, that is for low density housing. But you choose to use the one side with the smaller lots to define the whole area, when 3 of the other sides have lots that's 5 acres or more per lot. I just feel that most of the people that live on the what you would call the agricultural area around that, they've been here for 20 or 30 years. Why should we, as the bigger part of the community, people that want to live in the country, why should we bend to city people that want to come live in a small, closed community where they don't even know their neighbors' names and pressure wash their sidewalks? What I want to know really is, when is there going to be a complete, comprehensive environmental study done about exactly the impact that 2,000 homes on that acreage that covers 80% of it with concrete is going to have on our aquifer? Do not tell me it's not going to have an effect on it. Because all of that water that goes into that street is going to go into the stormwater system. It's not going to go back into the ground. Everyone that lives on the east and the west side and the south side of that property uses well water. If all of that water disappears, our wells run dry.
thank you very much.
Can I answer the question?
Yeah, go
about
right
the
ahead.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
So the Tamiami plat, that is not something that we as a city say we can or cannot do. That's state statute. Once a plat is filed, okay, no matter when it was filed, then that's in existence unless it is abandoned, okay? The developer or property owner has to ask for that plat to be abandoned because it is a vested right. So that's not something that the city is looking at and saying, hey, let's focus on that area, and so we have to uphold that as the density for the whole subdivision. That's already there. It's no different than plats that are downtown that have already been platted and someone comes in and wants to develop and we have to let them move forward. That is state law.
And isn't the water being reclaimed and run directly to the retention areas for this subdivision? Or the water runoff from the rain,
Yes.
where's most of that going to go?
So the stormwater runoff will have to be directed towards the stormwater basins, which will be, I know they appear blue in color, that's just to designate them from the open space areas and the parks, but they will actually be dry. So all the runoff will go into the stormwater basins, which we have to comply with the county's environmental protection code for providing extra water quality treatment. So any water that runs off that has, you know, impurities in it from vehicles and that sort of thing will hit stormwater basins. And then just like everything else, nature filters that through as the water goes through the soils.
It's like Bailey Estates with all their retention, the water runs and just fills up and then slowly perks back through. Okay. Although this is not as tight as Bailey Estates. Okay, next.
Good evening. I'm Dave Hell Regal. Close as you can get it, right? H-E-double-L Regal. A number of items obviously have been discussed and brought up. There's a couple comments made, and I heard a disconnect between use of the park and recreation areas as limited access, where one of y'all stated is full access to everybody. I think there's a misunderstanding on that point. Infrastructure is brought up and is a big topic, you know, traffic obviously and all the other. I would like to hear exactly what the definition of infrastructure is. I think we all have an idea what that is, but there's a lot of loose terms being thrown around as addressing items, when they will be handled, how they be handled, and the cost associated. And as long as the developer is held legally liable for those costs, then that is one element of that. So I'd like to know how that's going to be handled. I heard your comments about bonds or whatever you were stating as to hold them accountable or hold them financially responsible. In the City of High Springs Land Development Code, that's part of the agenda tonight, there's a few items in here that, whether you're aware or not, it seems like this is stepping directly on those things. Just to quickly point them out, there's whereas the planning board, serving as the local planning board agency, a study considered the items enumerated in the following sections, and based on the code and upon said study and consideration has determined and found that there's A through Z or whatever, but item D, delta, the proposed change will not result in a population density pattern or increase of or overtaxing of the load on public facilities such as schools, utilities, and streets. I think we all know there's going to be a massive impact on that. And that is pointed out in the land development use. Also, item G in that list is also an arguable item. Those changes will not adversely influence living conditions in the neighborhood. I think that's arguable. Item H, the proposed change will not create or excessively increase traffic congestion or otherwise affect public safety. I think we know there's going to be traffic congestion. Whether it's a phased development or not, ultimately this impact is going to grow, as Williams has stated, from 2 cars to you can't get through the intersections anymore. Item I, the proposed change will not create a drainage problem. We've talked some about that just recently. I think there will be some water impact. And item N, as in November, the proposed change is not out of scale with the needs of the neighborhood or the city. So what is the need? There's been a lot of growth in this area, a lot of impact from people traveling back and forth, trying to get out of Gainesville because they're tired of the headaches. I've been in the traffic. I don't want it. So is that my timer?
Yeah, that's your
All right.
timer. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The questions you had was basically what you're referring to by infrastructure, correct? By,
Yeah, correct. Your definition or the developer's definition.
well, from what I understand, the infrastructure would be, of course, the existing water, sewer, impact, traffic, and schools. Is there anything on the top of that? Public works?
Yeah, water, sewer, streets, drainage, schools are the main, and we do concurrency management report, police, fire, all
Yep.
city services, basically. And so that's why at plating, we take a closer look and do the studies, and we mitigate the impacts, and we don't let the development move forward until those things are figured out. That's why we have a preliminary and a final plat. And that's why there will be more agreements along the way to work with the developer to ensure that they're paying for development and we get it paid for up front. So this isn't the end in the process. It's an ongoing process to ensure we mitigate those factors so that all the things you mentioned, that it's a well-done subdivision with minimal impact.
But at the end
I'm
of
not
the
going
day,
to say
all
there's
that
no
traffic's gotta
impact
get
because
out
it's
of that
development.
subdivision,
So.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Next.
Good evening, Leland Ballard. Like many others here, I grew up in High Springs at least the majority of my life. A couple years after graduating from Santa Fe High School, joined the military and traveled for 6 years across the world. And moving back now as a new father and a husband, I have concerns like everybody else here, whether they have children, grandchildren, or they're just worried for the general public as well. And the one that I like to focus on is the school. And considering High Springs is already over capacity, and not just hearing that and reading about it in articles and news articles from friends that are teachers at the school and the concerns that are at the school, there's been discussions, and you guys have mentioned phased plans to adjust to these. But are there going to be any because those sound like you're assuming that the county as well as the state are going to be cooperative and things are going to go smoothly. Is the city as well as anybody else, the builder or developer, going to be planning on taking proactive measures to prevent from worsening, considering that High Springs is already over capacity? And I'd like to also make this look for an answer, a black and white answer on if it's going to be the kids that are outside of the zone that are going to be bused to other schools, or if it's going to be the children that are going to be in this development now that are going to be bused to other schools. I'd like to clear that up as well.
So-
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, we don't have any control over, the zones and where the kids are going to be bused. We have started preliminary conversations with the school. We've had a couple so far, and there's multiple things on the table.
Who was that? I'm sorry.
Alachua County Schools Planning Department. Chris, do you want to talk more about the schools in our conversations so far? We do not have an answer to the schools because it's up to them ultimately if they build. It's up to them if there's capacity or not, and they let us know if there's capacity. So I know that our school currently is at capacity. So I'm not going to sit there and say everyone from this is going to go to that school or people from that aren't going to be dislocated from the school should this subdivision come in. All I can say is that we're continuing discussions with them, and we could possibly even look at charter schools, those type of things. But I can't say how it's going to end up right now because we all know how Alachua schools.
And I'd ask for
is.
answers that don't revolve around the 30 to 35 acre donation, like actual deliverables and plans of
I
action for the
understand.
schools as the process happens.
I understand, and I can't. I'm just with the city, and I'm in charge of
Understand.
water, sewer,
I understand.
all of that, and the school district's in charge of.
And he's just with the developer. He can't
Right.
answer for everything else.
Yeah.
And there's already issues, and this is going to build upon those.
Right.
I mean, they can give them 1,000 acres, but it's up to Alachua County if they want to build a school or take on the money to do that. And like I said earlier, I was told that a lot of people are being bused into this school, and if they follow the standard plot of the closest students go to that school, okay, I'm done. No, the closest students go to that school, you should have priority. But we don't know what Alachua County would do. I mean, they've punished us in the past for things.
Are you going to announce as the process goes what those plans are?
Yes.
If we find out, then we will.
Yeah.
I mean, we keep meeting with them. We haven't gotten answers on the schools. we haven't. All I can say is we keep pursuing it, and
Mr.
that's
Chair?
where we're at.
So we did receive a letter from the school board that states their interest in the site. So that is the first step. Now, what happens afterwards with what they build or don't build or when they build, they said they had a substantial process to go through, making sure the site is what they need and the amount of students they're going to see. So, I mean, it is a good first step that they have stated their interest in the site for a school. So that's first step.
And we're on their radar. I mean, it's not like we're sitting back here being lackadaisical, just ignoring the issue. But I don't want to make promises of a new school if we haven't been promised one.
Yeah, we don't even know if they would divide it, one to make a full elementary and one to a full middle school, or combine it like they do currently. All right, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Sue Weller, and I'm here to talk about 222nd. I live on 154th Place, right around the corner from 222nd. Now, in the presentation, they indicated that that road going on to 222nd was not going to empty onto 222nd at this point. However, it seems to be, from what I'm hearing, is that it's going to be a future access road or a possible future access road. And the city has indicated that they're going to be looking at that as well. My questions on this is, if you decide that it's going to be a future access road, is the developer going to be responsible for the improvements that have to be made to that road? That road would have to be widened, it would have to be paved. That road is very narrow right now. The other issue, or other part of that, is that that road was designated several years ago, many years ago, as a scenic road. It doesn't have that sign there anymore, but I've asked for that sign to be put back up. But it is a designated scenic road in the city of High Springs. If that road ends up being developed, it will no longer be a scenic road. And the traffic coming out of that road to 100 and where it butts up to 174th and then to 441, again, as everybody has indicated, that's going to be a traffic nightmare. So the main question I really have at this point is, who is responsible for the cost of that development of that road? Would it be the developer?
The developer is responsible for the off-site improvements. With the roadway impact fees, the city will be receiving those from the development, and those fees are supposed to be used to partner with the developer, but those fees come from the homes in the development.
And I'm going to ask that if it gets to the point where you're making a developer agreement or entering into a developer agreement, that road, it is blocked off until that road is completely improved as it should be, that there is no access onto that road as it being a chip seal road.
We would not allow the plating to move forward without those issues being solved. We're not going to have people going onto unimproved roads. It's not safe.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. My name is Evan. I am a high school senior, probably one of the youngest people in this room. I would like to ask why it seems like everything is being rushed. All of these things have been proposed, talked about, schools, that's amazing, that's great, whatever, fit the infrastructure. Why is nothing on paper? Why has there been a dialogue that has been started with the county? Has anything occurred yet that is on paper that we can see that this is a good idea?
So we've been in discussions for 1.5 years, which is actually much longer than any other development, maybe in the city that I'm aware of, at least since I've been here. And we've been in discussions with other entities, but this is the first step. The plan development is the first step before they start doing additional studies and spending additional money to get further along the path to have more of these answers. But they cannot plat the phases until these things are solved. So just because we approve the PD tonight doesn't mean they're full steam ahead tomorrow. So, Chris, do you have anything to add to that?
Evan, also, when I first moved up here 16 years ago, there was talk of building Tillman Acres out. So, but like she's saying, this is just what you're asking for. This is actually the start of it. one at a time, and this is going to drag on
For a
quite a
long
while.
time. There'll be a lot of agreements in addition to the plats.
And then one more question. This is a 5-member committee, right?
Yes.
Okay. Why are there only 3 of y'all here?
One's in the
I can
hospital, and the other one's out of town.
Okay, thank you. All right, y'all
Can
have
I
a good
grab
night.
your last name first? I'm sorry, I only got Evan. What's your last name? Cornell. Gotcha. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Angela Knudsen, and this is my daughter, Elise Knudsen. We live off of 154th Place, and as my next door neighbor, actually, Sue Weller, just mentioned to you, 222nd Street is a designated scenic road. Are we willing to bulldoze those trees and destroy our tree canopy to appease a developer? Anyone?
If you're asking that now,
Sure.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a developer. Anytime that road's improved, those trees are probably going to go.
So our designated scenic road really means nothing.
Well, I don't know. Does that mean it be? I wasn't here for the scenic road. Was it just because of the trees, or because that it traveled through the countryside?
I'm actually not sure. I'm an ER
See,
trauma nurse.
that's. It's just like you know they got highways, state highways and stuff, and you go through there because it was a battleground or something. Doesn't necessarily mean because of the trees. And I actually have been finding out lately there's been a lot of trees along that road falling, and there's been discussion of actually pushing back the trees. So I don't know what's going to happen here in the future, but at this point, from what I understand, is if any road gets improved, I had when I moved up here, there was a tree right in the middle of my road, and we just drove around it. I thought that was the coolest thing. The city came in and paved the roads. I was out of town for 3 months, came back, and my tree was gone. That big, beautiful tree in the middle of the road. And they said, well, that's where the road goes. And unfortunately, when you look at the plot maps and all that, and it shows where the road goes, whatever's in the way goes.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
just thank you for
Yeah.
clarifying that
Yeah.
our tree canopy and our scenic road means nothing in the way of progress.
Well, that's not what I said.
Okay, that's how I'm interpreting
Well,
it.
okay, I appreciate it.
And just, I guess like my final thought is that you probably noticed that the only people in this room that are in favor of this subdivision are the people with dollar signs in their eyes. The rest of the citizens standing here greatly oppose this. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, you got to realize that without more revenue, this city's in trouble. We just had our taxes raised, didn't we? It's the truth, ma'am. I like a small town. I moved from a real packed town and came up here. I like a small town, but would you rather be like Alachua and putting up big complexes of big storage houses and stuff like that? At least it's still a home. Its homes are being put in and stuff. And I agree the infrastructure is horrible. I don't even go downtown anymore. The traffic is horrible, but we got to find a way to grow, get revenue, and do things that are good for the city, but not overwhelm it. And this is part of that process. Next.
2,000 homes is not overwhelming. Point of order. Sorry, Marlene Ackland.
Would you like?
2,000 homes is not overwhelming. I agree with you because I was here before when you said the same thing. If we don't raise revenue, High Springs is going to die. That was pretty much what you said.
Yeah,
and I understand that we have to grow. But like other people have said, we need to grow wisely and not 2,000 homes. Because in the back of my head, I'm thinking there's going to be 40 homes on 142nd, which is another plot that you're going to be discussing. And I live in Springstead, 2741. How long is it going to take before people realize one lane, traffic jams immediately? Because last time when you spoke, you said Department of Transportation has to get involved, and it's a big deal, and it's not quick. How quick is the development going to be put up and keep in line with our infrastructure like people have brought up? How quickly is it all going to kind of come together? Or is the development going to be there and not the infrastructure? And then we're going to be in traffic jams and dirty well water. I drink my water. I don't want sewage or whatever coming from this big development going into the aquifer and I'm drinking it. So, I mean, I understand we have to grow, but this sounds crazy.
Mr. Chair? Just to clarify, this is a phased development, so you're going to see build out with all these homes. It's not going to be one phase, not going to be overnight. It is 10 to 20 years, possibly even more, depending on what it takes to get through and, the market for the houses. So this is a long-term development, not
Yeah, this is
all
not like
overnight.
next year there's 2,000
Correct.
homes.
Yes,
Yeah.
there will not be 2,000 homes next
I'll
year.
be dead before this thing's done.
I hope not.
And I would like to say it's city water and sewer, which means it's going to go in the pipes to the plants. So it's not gonna, it's not gonna be well and septic, which is actually, as far as septic is concerned, we want people off the septic, so that's better for the aquifer. Likewise, I do want to remind people again that there are 1,440 homes that the developer is already entitled to.
When you say that based on, you were talking about the previous 1925, when you approved the 2004 plan and did Tillman Acres, did that not supersede the development when you changed it from agriculture to residential 1 and approved that plan in 2004?
No, because that's zoning. There was already a plat that was entitled. You have to abandon the plat. The plat was never abandoned.
Okay, ma'am, but when you as a city approved the 2004 plan, the plan development, you said then, this is what we want to do moving forward. So we took 1925, we overruled it by 2004. Now you said we want to overrule it by 2022. We're moving forward, and we as educated people understand that, but we can't use 1925 as the scapegoat for what we're trying to do in 2022 because a developer spent $6 million on some property.
It's not a scapegoat. It's state statute.
We have no choice at a point. It's the state, he can do what he
Not have a
wants.
city attorney who can represent us to take care of that for us?
Mr. Chair.
The advantage we have here is we're trying to keep it from being like it was in 1925. It's going to be larger lots, less invasive compared to what they did in 1925. We don't want a Bailey Estates over there. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, the plat, it's my understanding that plat has never been vacated. And your manager is exactly correct. Until it's vacated, the property owner has vested rights. Whoever the property owner is that owns that property, that plat has been in place since 1925, accepted, it's a public record, and it is, in fact, it is in place there and has never been vacated. Now, on a go-forward basis, I wasn't here in 2004, or whenever the existing PUD was in place for Tillman Acres, but on a go-forward basis, we will have a development agreement that will govern how the development will occur, both as to roads, internal and external roadways, and other improvements that will be made on a phase-by-phase basis before the developer can move forward. And one of the terms in that development agreement will be that the plat will be vacated. That's part and parcel of what is coming down the pike. I can't help what was happening in 2004. I can't help what happened in 1925. I can help what happens on a go-forward basis.
Part of our problem is we're limited by the law. And once things are approved, we're hamstrung in some ways. But if we can get them to negotiate to something better, something more, I guess, in line with our town, I would think that would be better than them just coming in and say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put these homes in here. They're going to be 40, 50-foot wide lots and, just suck it up. I don't want that. Go ahead.
Okay, Annalise Britsback. I have one question. So everything is going to be spread out over time, which sounds very nice, except if you live 25 feet from where they start to build for the next 20 years. I do not want to hear bulldozers for 20 years. I mean, really? If you want to develop it and you say this has to be done, put a time limit on it, because we moved out of the city to get peace and quiet, not to live next to bulldozers for 20 years. And I'm sure you say that you want to negotiate. A again, most of the land that's around that development, that's already developed, is in, at the least, acre lots. So conform. You can still build there, but conform to what is in the surrounding areas. You will still get revenue. Yeah, you won't get the big dollars you'll get from 2,000 homes, but you will still get revenue on a more acceptable basis for the residents of High Springs and to what the community around that area, the traffic and everything like that, can actually accommodate.
But they were already been approved for much smaller lots. So to ask them to go to 1 acre lots, I don't think that's something will get approved by them or accepted by them. Am I correct on that?
No, you're right. That's, again, there's 1,440 lots already on the property, and I think you'd be hard pressed to find a developer or a property owner who would give up that right.
Can you show us back to the old 1925 plat that you showed earlier today?
Is it on yours?
It was slide 2, I think.
On Chris's.
All right. You see in the blue? That's what they're talking. That's all that's been approved. Not all this other land has not been approved.
Please come to the podium.
And that's what I was saying before. It's not that we're not trying to let a developer develop the land. But what you're saying is, and that's what I was talking about, this is where the lots you're talking about are here. It has nothing to do with all this other land.
Yeah, I understand it, but that's 14 and 40 homes going there, and then he can come into as a developer and saying, let's get these other approved based on those 1,440 homes because it's right there.
A small part of parcel of land dictate another 500 plus acres.
It's about, yeah, it's close to the same size, but you're still, you have to look at it as a whole. I mean, if you're putting 1,440 homes there, and then he comes in and says, okay, I'm going to develop the rest of it, let's do it just like there, it's just like property, put another 2,000 homes right there.
But sir, like the lady said before, you're letting this small plot from 1925
Right.
dictate everything else that's happening in our community. And that's not right.
Mr. Chair?
I appreciate what the developer's trying to do.
There's
And I appreciate my fellow citizens coming to this meeting to talk to y'all.
Right.
We're not trying to dictate, we're not trying to stop anything. All we're asking is to work with us in the community.
Sir?
We're trying to, okay.
That's all we're asking for.
Go ahead, Christy.
Just out of order. I mean,
Okay.
we really need to keep people to their allotted time. You've
Right.
spoken twice. This is your third time
Oh, he's been up here
speaking.
before?
recognize me, and that's
I know.
I'm
I
sorry.
I understand, but
That's my mistake. I didn't recognize.
This
Okay.
one's a little. It's not just the 1925 plat. We have to take into consideration the plan development that was approved in 2004 or 5. So it's not just that small area. We have to take into account what was also approved
And
on the
that might be
PD.
Because I have copies of it when I came
Right.
in 2011 and got copies from you.
All right, go ahead, sir.
Randall Kegler, Kegler. Bought 5 acres down from the pig house. Been doing some clearing, love the oaks. Spoke to you about a month ago. Okay? Couple questions for you. I like the fact the map's still up. Is that
Who owns what?
parcel with the 1,400 houses or whatever?
So the whole area is owned by the Bridlewood of High Springs LLC, which is the developer. So they own all that
So they
area.
purchased that property.
Correct.
So the least common denominator is they could be stuck developing that property.
They technically already have rights to develop, so yes.
And who in their right mind, who moved to High Springs, wants to live on a lot that small? I can see coming to an agreement, to a compromise. I can't see 2,000 houses. I can't see the fact that there's not 5 people sitting here making a decision tonight that couldn't be tabled for further discussion. And that a citizens committee, which I recommended at the last meeting, be created, and I'd be happy to serve on, so that we don't have everybody getting too worked up about a shirt. The city planners, they're educated, of course they are, so am I. I taught agriculture. I'm a scientist. I know what source point pollution is. That's every bit of that rainwater coming down on that development, going into those DRAs and going directly into the aquifer without filtration. Well and a septic tank have got to be 75 feet apart for biological reasons. And the septic tank is more efficient than a city municipality taking waste and then dropping the water in a confined area. I'm an environmental scientist of 31 years. I'm also a product specialist in polymers. So I'm not speaking to you out of emotion. I'm speaking to you out of reality. If I were sitting in your place right now with this wonderful group of people that have showed up tonight to voice their opinion, listen to their opinion, put together a committee, table your decision. You don't have to make it tonight. The other two people are not here. And one of which, the woman I don't know very well because I haven't moved here long enough, was not for this plan.
So, can I?
Mr. Chair, we don't have any women on our plan board. You might be thinking of the commission?
Maybe I was speaking to the commission. I apologize.
Yeah, no worries.
That's the first I heard of this, and if this has been going on for a year and a half, and this is the first that they're hearing of it, then they need to hear more. The very first words was democracy. And then you asked me to swear or affirm. I affirmed. As a Christian, I can't swear. And as I told the last meeting of the board, I came here because this is God's country. I don't want to see them bulldoze buildings in downtown High Springs the way they plan on bulldozing 100-year live oaks. I went to great expense on my 5 acres. I'd like 3 more minutes so I don't have to come back up.
Oh, well, actually, we weren't supposed to give him any more time. I didn't realize he'd been up here already,
Fair
so.
is fairness and democracy.
I understand that.
She has a question I'd like to answer.
Well, did you ask him a question?
I didn't ask a question. I just wanted to correct some things. There have been several presentations on Bridalwood in the last 1.5 to 2 years. At each different concept, they've come up and presented before the commission, and I think only one time before the plan board, but has been more than one time in front of the commission. Likewise, the commission, correct me if I'm wrong, they can appoint the committees, the plan board cannot.
We can't.
And I think the person you're talking about is a commissioner, and so.
Like I said, my dad always, whenever he was wrong, he says, I'm new here.
Right. Yeah, we're like a step, and all we do is if we approve something, it then goes to the commission, and then they make the choices from, the only power we technically have is to table it, and then, or refuse it, and by law, we really can't refuse this, but.
Like I say, I'm not opposed to seeing Tillman's Acres get bigger like it
Right.
is. I'm opposed to condensed, I'm opposed to the
Right.
fact that we're sitting on the most pristine aquifer in the state, and it runs right underneath Tillman Acres. You can talk to the geophysicist, I know that for a fact. You got a water bottling plant. The only reason it's there is because of that sheet that comes up through the Ocala Plain, up through Gaines, up through the High Springs area. That's why they call the place High Springs.
Right.
By putting that development in there, you're going to screw up the aquifer. You need to table this. You need to listen to these people. You need to form a committee. You need to then come back in a month. Let us talk about it again, but not in anger or in, emotional. To me, it's more realistic.
Right.
I've moved from those areas. 2,500 homes can be built no time at all.
All right, thank you very much. We can't do anything other than, we can't go beyond, and like you said, the commission can do a study committee and all that, correct?
They can, but there already have been several public workshops the developer
this?
has held.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's not true that this has been behind the scenes or anything.
Right.
This has already been the open, and there's been opportunities.
All right, anybody else like to speak real quick?
I don't think I finished all of my 3 minutes. So I'd like to ask the landscape architect, if I could. Is she still here?
Me one more time.
What?
Can you state your name?
John Hackland.
Gotcha, thank you.
About the buffer zones and,
All right.
and how they, and about the buffer zones and how they can be constructed, and if they can be
if that's a little flexible.
Okay.
Thank you.
I guess he wants to know, are they fixed in stone, or are they flexible and different, for, I guess, for putting up old growth? Size, okay.
Right, so, so they're 25-foot buffers around the entire perimeter, and those will be landscaped per the land development code requirements, and if there are additional requirements as part of the developer's agreement, those would be incorporated as well. But that hasn't been determined yet.
It sounds like you determined the size.
The width was determined as part of discussions getting to this point.
The last time it was discussed, and I was here, it was 60.
Can we please have the comments go through the chair and come to the
Yeah.
podium each time
Yeah.
for the sake of the recording?
Yeah, I'm sorry. The last time I was here, which is about, I guess, a year ago, the buffer was 60 feet. So that's
don't think that was this one.
substantially different size.
I'm wondering if he's referring to the area, remember where the cut through was through Tillman, that now we have created kind of an additional buffer in addition to the 25 feet?
No.
Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about the end of 232nd Street, which is our park. We have a little park there, and people have built there.
Mhm.
And, you know, I think that if there's a house like,
Within Springstead?
yes.
Okay,
Spring-
so it is the part you're thinking of where we eliminated the connection to Springstead on the southern side of Bridlewood. So it is the part you're thinking of.
So it's bigger than the 25 feet?
I'm not
Is that
sure what
the
it
term?
is now. I just know that it's not a connection anymore.
It's not a
Okay.
connection anymore, and we're thankful
Correct.
for that, but
I don't know what the
also
buffer is.
we're used to the idea that it was gonna be a little bit more distant for some of our residents there. Yeah, and for us, yeah, all of us. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Next.
Is that possible to change that?
Well, everything's subject to change before everything's approved.
Okay.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm Terry Phelan, Phelan. So, I have some questions, especially when you're talking about all this plat stuff, I'm just going to say all my questions.
Good,
and
that's
then-
great.
okay. So, who is the original owner of the plat? Has anyone asked the original owner to vacate the plat? What happens once that plat is vacated by the original owner? So, but that's a question. And then, so there's all these plans going on for all these new roads for Bridlewood. What are the plans for the existing roads that are already in need of repair within the city limit?
Okay. You want me to- oh,
wait.
we'll let her go.
I've been asking about that too, so.
Okay, me too.
So, yeah, and I keep hearing about stormwater basins filtering all the toxic runoff from Bridlewood. It's just not possible to filter all of the toxins to zero through these stormwater basins. I just wanted to clear that up. Our river is already in dire straits. If anybody's been on the river recently, it's just full of filamentous algae from the nitrates over just being too much nutrient overload. So that's huge. And also, I've been hearing about, which sounds really good to me because of what they've been doing in Lake City, and I'm not sure if this is what you guys got your grant for. I heard a $7 million grant to do a sewage wetlands similar to, so that's a question. And that would be great if, and I was wondering if that is what's going to happen, if Bridlewood is going to be tied into that. So I think that's, oh, and also mentioning that, and I'm not sure if I'm understanding this correctly, but the water use, it's not going to be, they're saying it's not going to be more? Because that can't be right. Or are you saying that you have a certain amount of water permitted, so many say gallons, millions of gallons per day, already permitted, so what you're saying is you're not already using that full amount. So you have some extra that you can use, and Bridlewood isn't going to make you have to go back to the Suwannee River Water Management District and ask for more. So, because, you know, they are going to use, they're going to use a lot of, they're going to use as much water as the city is using now, you know.
Do you wanna
If not. So
field
those
the-
are all my questions.
I'm gonna let Chris, there were so many, I'm gonna let Chris do it.
Okay.
I started writing them down, there were so many, I just
Yeah.
lost track, I didn't know where
Well,
to start.
the-
Okay,
the
if you go one by
capaci-
one, I can do it, but well,
The water
Chris is
use
up there now.
I think the water use is, we're not at capacity with water use.
Right,
That's,
that's-
that's the reason for that, is we're not
Yeah.
at capacity with water use.
So-
I don't know about the sewage wetlands
The
grant.
sewer, we have already been awarded the grant
Okay.
for the sewer, for the expansion. Now, at certain trigger points, then it would trigger another expansion or wastewater treatment plant or working with Alachua or Newberry. We're looking at a lot of options. But
And then the other one was, what about the other roads that need upkeep?
yes. Okay, with the cells, that's a question for our public works director and
Yeah.
assistant city
Might want to
manager.
recharge is what she's
Okay.
asking about.
And the other one was, is the money, why, about existing roads that are not upkept.
Okay, well, so the existing roads, that's a budgetary issue. This development would give us more property tax, which would help us have a larger budget to fix existing roads in the city. So it actually, that would be a positive for this development. There's also the election with the county that would give us some money. We were able this past year within the budget to find, I can't remember the exact amount, I think it was $300,000 to $400,000 additional in our road budget. A lot of people don't realize this, but our road budget is the second highest budget in the city. That's not an enterprise fund, not water and sewer, of the general fund after police, but we definitely need a lot more. So, that's one of the reasons for the roadway impact fees as well, and applying for grants. So we're trying to do a lot of things to get money for the roads, but this development will provide more money for roads.
And I don't have the answers for who the original owner of the plat was. And if,
Okay.
I don't think the original owner can vacate the
doesn't-
plat now
no,
at
right,
this
so
point.
that doesn't really kind of matter right now, because the current property owner is the one
Who
who would
has-
determine if they wanted to vacate that plat or not. And this is kind of the compromise they're working with us on, is they will vacate the plat. The development agreement says that they will vacate the plat within a year, if this PD goes through.
And I think that's, was that all of them, ma'am? All right, one more thing.
So this is very important. To me, it's too important to have two members absent to not vote. So if you would table the vote so that all of the plan board members can be present to vote.
Thank you. Next. Yeah, talk loud.
Can I get your name for the record?
Stephen Davis.
Got it.
As far as 174th, it is not capable of being
If I thought I saw somewhere in a future plot map, it was designed to be 4-laned.
I don't want to comment on that right now.
Okay.
Without, I mean, again, we're not at that point yet.
Okay, I'm not positive, but I thought I saw something on a future map a year or so ago that showed that it's potential for 4-lane. Okay, thank you. I think that's why the power lines were set where they were, is from what I understand, so, okay. We'll look into that, definitely, thank you. Next.
My name is Stephanie Clifford. So the road issue keeps coming up, and I feel like it's irresponsible to approve this proposed amendment of increasing the units from the current plan, which I think was about 800 plus the plat that we keep talking about of 1440, up to 2,000 total units, not just houses, without having these issues of the roads and, you know, impacting residents. I mean, you're going to have to do something with 2741 with the light that comes from 154 to 41. You're gonna have to put a light there. That intersection's already really dangerous. And then just the condition of the roads. And I think it's irresponsible for the city to hear not one citizen come up here and support this tonight and still move forward with increasing the units and not have a concrete plan, no pun intended, on what we're gonna do with these roads. Not just the safety of them, but widening them, impacting all the residents that currently live here. You know, we can have zoning approval, but at the end of the day, you need to also think about the health and the welfare and the safety of not just the current residents that live here in High Springs, but also the future residents that are going to live in this community. I do want to echo the point. There was discussion, oh, it's not showing up on the TV. Okay, there was discussion about how these, this new 2,000 unit subdivision is going to match the northern acreage lots that are there right now. And then there was talk that Tillman Acres currently has 20,000 square foot. No, my lot is 170,000 square foot. Most lots in Tillman Acres are 1+, not 20,000. That's half an acre. And all this property down here, those aren't 5,000 square foot, 10,000 square foot. So I really think you guys need to keep in mind matching the subdivision, maybe not completely through, like still having, you know, your multiple family units, but at least on the exterior, somewhat trying to match what the current High Springs residents are.
So we have a land use plan and a zoning ordinance. So when I throw out those numbers, those are the minimum allowed by zoning. And so when we make our decisions, we have to make them based on, again, this is governed by state statute and how we're supposed to do planning. You know, that's what we go by, is what the zoning categories and what's allowed in those categories.
Well, I'm asking you to go by what your current citizens actually who live in the city right now and to respect them, because you're being very disrespectful to the citizens that currently live here.
Okay, I don't appreciate that comment because I am respectful.
Okay. And then last thing, how tall is the buffer going to be? The 25-foot buffer?
Thank you very much. I think it's a natural growth buffer. Trees and shrubs, there she is.
Yeah, so it'll be planted per the land development code requirements for the buffer, which I don't know those off the top of my head because we aren't at that point yet, but generally it's a certain number of canopy trees per 100 linear feet, certain number of understory trees per linear feet. So when we get to that point, again, it'll be either the code minimum, it's what's currently required in code for a buffer with those two different types of zoning adjacencies, or if there are additional requirements per the developer's agreement, that would be included as well. There is a minimum number. I don't know it off the top of my head. Perhaps somebody else does. It's in your land development code now, though. It's established.
Also, I sit up here and I have to maintain both sides as well as these guys. So it may sound like I'm agreeing with him on one thing, and I hope by my questions you guys see that I'm asking the right questions. I'm not being favored or disrespectful. I'm stating obvious facts. Revenue's one of them, but also I don't want 4,000 homes going in there. We just had a situation right on the other side of High Springs here. People fought having a piece of property come in because they didn't want a subdivision going in where we had control on the amount of homes. They didn't come in because people spoke out against it. Now that they're putting twice as many homes in there and they're staying in Alachua. So at least we have control here, and that's part of what we're doing is we want to keep this under control and make it a part of the city without having it right next to us. And if they weren't in the city, they could put 4,000 homes in there, and we don't want that. Next.
Good evening. My name is Mitch Knutson. I live off 154th Place. And I think just from hearing the discussions tonight, there are several, I guess, camps. There's the citizens, especially those who live around this. You've heard them. Nobody wants this. who lives around that area. Nobody in this room, I haven't heard anybody who wants this. On the other hand, the developer is saying, this is what we're going to do. You don't like it or not, this is what we're going to do. And then we have the board saying, we're just following the law. They have statute. Why can't we compromise? Why can't we work together? Why can't we enter a dialogue like a citizens commission, especially those who are directly impacted by such a development? Maybe enter a dialogue directly with the developer and say, hey, would you work with us? Could you work with us? Or maybe not. But I think that's reasonable, and I think my neighbor Randy mentioned that, I think he offered last time, that maybe why not have a citizens commission to address these concerns? Look, we realize that growth is inevitable, and we want growth, we want tax revenue. But I think it can be done in a more holistic, rational fashion that everybody wins. I think we can do that. Isn't that what democracy is? Working together, compromise? But I'm seeing no compromise here. I'm seeing this is what we're going to do. This is the statute. We just got to follow it. And everybody else is, we don't like it. Let's try to work together.
They started with 2,500 homes, and now they've gone down significantly. So again, I mean, if it's up to the commission, it's up to the developer at this point. That's where we're at.
Okay, so here's my question. 25 to 2,000 is insignificant. My question that I would like to ask to the developer is, would the developer be willing to enter into a dialogue with a group of concerned citizens who directly live by and will be impacted by it? Yes or no?
Weren't there 2 workshops on this, public workshops? With the
Chris,
developer?
do you want to talk about what's happened so far?
Yeah, so first, I mean, we're more than welcome to, I can pass out my card at the end, open for questions, comments, discussions. I mean, we'd happy to meet with you guys one-on-one. So, you know, we're not here to be the bull in the china shop and just say this is how we want it. You know, we have been working with city staff. We did have 2,500 homes, and the most single-family homes that we can get is actually under 1,500 now. So we almost cut it in half, which is less than what is actually platted. I know everybody keeps discussing about this existing plat. These 1,400 homes would end up going through Tillman Acres right now. So I know everybody's talking about, you know, what impacts do you have to your neighbors? Well, you know, just standing back and seeing, I can see the rooms getting divided about what about me, but we're looking to support the whole city as a whole, not just, you know, sliding away from one subdivision, which is going to impact another. We're looking at this holistically. We did have a workshop. It's publicized maybe last summer. I know it was in 2021. I think it was midsummer or late fall, possibly. Don't know the exact date, but again, you know, we're not here to ruin City High Springs. We're here to work with the city staff to bring a product that we believe not only the community wants, but as well as staff and the appointed commissioners and members. So at the end, we're willing to pass out my card. If anybody has any questions, comments, like to set up meetings, feel free. I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you very much. Set a date, you mean for what? He'll pass out his card and you can connect with him on that. Anybody else? Okay. I'm closing public.
I think I know what you're coming up here with. I have the printout, and I will read it into the record so that you don't have to be involved since you're a commissioner. So let me
you,
pull
ma'am.
that out here. 1 second.
I wasn't going to read all of it, but whatever you feel is appropriate, just to make the
Yeah,
general.
I'm just going to put the whole thing into record just
Okay.
so that we, there it is.
Is that this one?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
right here. So it was an email that came in, so let me just read it into the record. It states, "Hello, I am out of state for work, but would like my email read by Ms. Whites at the Plan Board meeting tonight. In response to the development of the unbridled housing development, it's very disappointing to witness the lack of concern by the city manager, Plan Board, and City Commission. Several citizens have expressed their concerns over this development that will effectively change the landscape of this city. These concerns have fallen on deaf ears publicly, while different perspectives are discussed in informal parking lot conversations after meetings. It's disappointing that the city refuses to change zoning to stop the developments and instead hide behind but the lawsuit's excuse. I'd like these questions answered on the record. Number 1, lift station is at capacity. The city is applying for grants. That's wonderful, but applying for and receiving the grant takes how long? More than a year to receive the funds, and how long to build a new lift station after that? Meanwhile, the development continues. Where is it written that no new building can occur until the lift station can handle the capacity? Saying that new construction will be denied is a lot different than having it in writing for the builders. Number 2, the local school is at capacity. With the current and new school board, no new school will be built, period. Setting aside land in the event of funds to build a new school is nice, but again, no new school will be built. How can you vote for this development and others and look at the parents with kids in local schools in the eye and support busing local kids to F-rated or underperforming schools that are not at capacity? Is this what you want for our kids? Number 3, no infrastructure for street improvements. The excuse that this is a Alachua DOT issue and the citizens should contact this official. What has the city done to address these issues? This is why we elect you. Number 4, destruction of wildlife habitats. Does anyone else find it ironic that the developers want to destroy the current natural environments to create green space? Research shows that ecotourism brings in dollars and there is great opportunities. Number 5, I've been told privately that once the Plan Board votes, then it's almost impossible for the Commission to overrule or vote against what the Plan Board approves. Is this true? If so, how is that an unelected board has more power than elected officials, commissioners? If this is hearsay, please clarify so that I may better understand. Number 6, I've heard in previous meetings from the realtor that this is affordable housing. How is 400K house affordable? Number 7, I've heard in previous meetings from the civil engineer that people don't want large lots. This justification is wrong. There are at least a dozen housing developments where there is high-density housing on small lots. People move to High Springs because they want land and do not want to live in a community where you can hang out your window and high-five your neighbor from their window. Number 8, there should not be allowed any new development to have roads that cut through existing housing developments. Has this been discussed or policies implemented? And this is the closing paragraph. Approval of this proposal is irresponsible, and it is the responsibility of the city to implement sustainable growth policies that protect the community and infrastructure. If the city board and commissioners are not up to this challenge, resign now so people who are willing to tackle the hard issues head on can step up. These issues are difficult, but the citizens have spoken against this. Progress is what's happening in Gainesville. Sustainable growth is what's needed in High Springs. Please be a leader and protect our environment. Thank you. And it's signed Shelley Leonard. So I've written, I've read that into the record. So please feel free to answer any of these, or if you need an answer from me, I might have a couple. Whatever you want to do.
Why don't you go ahead and answer what you know on that already?
So I do know I can correct the Plan Board is more powerful than Commission. You are not. You are an advisory board only. So you can say yay or nay on anything you'd like, and it's advisory only. The Commission has final say.
All right. And what were the other ones that were question-wise? There were sort of like 8 of them there. So.
It does talk about the school. So it says that the school
Yeah.
board isn't interested or not building a school.
Have we covered everything on the?
I think we've covered a majority of these, because the school board is interested. They've issued us an official letter stating that.
And we're still susceptible to what the school board does.
Correct. Yeah, we're still bound by whatever the school board decides to do.
Okay.
So but interest is good. And then we've already talked about capacity issues, infrastructure. We've talked about roads. So I think we've hit a majority of these.
Okay. Kevin, is there anybody online that, no virtual participation? Okay, I guess we'll close the public forum, and you got anything to say? Any questions?
I think we covered everything.
You got anything you want to say?
No, I've tried to answer things the best I can at this stage. I mean, some of this stuff comes up plating if it's approved.
Okay, and our choices are here are to approve, disapprove, or table it for future discussion. And that would be at the normal meeting a month from, or would it be 3 weeks from now, right?
So the next meeting we officially have is September 13th. That is not one of our usual dates, but it is one we've had to make for you guys to, accommodate.
But
'cause
that
we have
wouldn't
so
be
many.
where we would hear this again. It would be probably the one after that?
You would have to specify. So then the next official meeting would be September 27th.
Okay. That's if we tabled it.
Correct.
Okay. What do you guys got? Do you guys want to go with the wish of theirs and have the other two here?
I have a couple things to say. First of all, I appreciate every one of y'all's input. I've been on this board approximately a year and a half. Two of the members that are not here tonight, I can tell you one of them I know personally. He was hospitalized and in Shands, and that is the reason he could not be here tonight. I do have two things to say. I personally, as a member of this board, would like a little bit more clarification on these access roads leaving this development. I do have some concerns about that. And I would like to say, as much as I don't want to say this, the letter that you just wrote, Christie, I really took offense to the one statement in there. If the city board and commissioners are not up to this challenge, resign now so people who are willing to tackle the hard issues head on can step up. These issues are difficult, but the citizens have spoken against this. One thing I want to say to all of you, I think I can say this on behalf of all this board. I take this position seriously, and I don't just show up to a meeting. We go out and we look at all the sites, the majority of us. So we have a good idea when you come in here with a lot of your questions. I will say I have been out here, but for some reason I did not go to 222. So I really don't know what it looks like. It sounds like it's a beautiful road. So that's all the comments that I have this evening.
I'll just add, I'd like to add something to that. Anybody that has come to any of these board meetings, I think would tell you or agree that this group works very hard and tries to be fair. And for anybody to say that the commission rubber stamps everything we do, it's not true. We make a recommendation, that's our job. We recommend what we think it should be. I have concerns too. I do not like to see too much growth too fast. I think it has to be managed. And I think everybody, I can speak for this group, they feel the same way. It's a hard decision, but it's our job to do it.
The only other thing I would like to bring up is, as you mentioned, these people here are out speaking against it. But that's because it directly impacts you guys. I mean, we've approved a lot of stuff that none of you people showed up for in favor of them. So that's why you guys are all here speaking out against it. If you wanted it somewhere else, you're not going to show up here and speak to stop it there. So yes, everybody, no, what I'm saying is everybody here is directly impacted. But that's, I understand that, but I'm just saying, that's why everybody's speaking out against it, is most people here are impacted, for the most part, that's what they're here for. And I understand that, and I'm all for it, and I know you guys think that I'm just gonna push this through. No, I'm not. I'm just trying to be both sides, trying to be totally impartial. And that's why it may sound odd when I say something like revenue and stuff, but I gotta take in everything. Okay, and I try to be fair. Like you said, I go to the sites, I drive around, I drive up and down the roads, I look where these things, for the mural the other day. I drove by that place a dozen times trying to figure out how that thing looked, and it's just a mural. And yet I still went and checked it out. So I'm not just up here. I've been on this planning board, what, 3 years now? Yeah, and I missed one meeting and got appointed chairman, so that shows you how it goes. You know, so I will make the best decision I think it is for the city. So that's all I got to say. And I guess we just need a motion for something to happen.
Right now, my feelings are, as much as I want to move forward, I'd like to table it and have more clarification on these roads.
Set to a date certain. Which date would you like?
What?
Next plan board is technically September 13th.
Can we fit
but
it in that one, or would it be better just to go to the next one?
It depends. Can we answer those questions in time for you? So it might be better to do the 27th. I'd like Ashley's input on this. Where would you like it in the
I would
agenda?
like the engineers as well.
Yeah, how long do you think it would take to answer any questions that have come up that they want clarification on for, I'm assuming, roads?
The roads mostly, I think.
Infrastructure, things like that?
I mean, what is the question as far as the roads? That determines.
Well, I've just heard a lot of public input tonight, and, you know, they're concerned what's going to happen to 222, you know.
As well as on 41 because of that bad corner there too.
I mean, some of it is additional analysis on engineers
So-
and how much money you want to
And
spend.
I know that if we were to approve to move forward, I know that probably will
come out in the wash.
Will come out down the road. I'd kind of like to see it up front.
Well, DOT will not make a decision until a application for a driveway connection has been submitted. They will not evaluate traffic analysis. They will not do any studies on their own to determine the necessary roadway impacts until something is submitted for construction. That is DOT's stance. We can ask DOT's input, but they cannot give a formal or educated or reviewed response to items unless it is a formal application to start construction.
Chris, I think what the board is looking for, perhaps from you or somebody on your staff, is kind of a conceptual and a preliminary plan of where the phasing you think would begin. I think you said earlier that the school portion of it, should the school board accept the donation of that particular land, the school would probably be one of the areas that would be looked at for development first. Where would the initial stages of the development occur? And I think one of the questions this evening was, how would that look if we have traffic going in and out of that school system? What would that look like, and what would be the bottlenecking perhaps that would happen associated with school access and the development access, phase one, phase two? You said, I think very appropriately, we're looking at a 10 to 20 year phasing dependent, and you also said very appropriately, this is governed by what happens in the economy, and we don't know what that's going to be. Nobody can really predict that. I've been part of an economic presentation over the last couple of weeks, and they're talking about an economic downturn in the first part of 2020, the first 2 quarters of 2023. That's going to affect this probably and how it's going to develop out. So it's hard to predict those things. But I think they're looking for information and the scenic roadway system that we have associated with this, which I believe, as I understood, is chip sealed. And how is this going to impact traffic on that chip sealed road? My lay understanding of chip sealed roads is they degrade over about a 5-year period, especially with intense use. So what is the developer's plan for that impact? And you answered the question, I think, to some degree this evening. development is going to be, the developer is going to be responsible for that process. You and I and Ashley will be involved in development agreements as to how that's going to happen over time. And I think what our board is looking for is more delineation on the, I perfectly understand and agree you can't get DOT information at this point, but a little more discussion and delineation on those kind of issues, I think, is what they're looking for from you. I suspect also that part of the motion to continue is based upon the fact that we have two members that aren't here this evening. Whether our other member that is in the hospital right now can make the next meeting, I don't know, but I suspect that's what is being considered by the members.
So,
Well, real quick, let me ask this before we go that step. If we approve it now, it goes to the commission. When would it go to the commission?
Let me pull that for you. I have that info. One
Okay.
second.
the 19th.
The 19th?
Oh, he already knew it. Yes,
Okay.
that's
So-
right, the 19th.
And it would basically be the same as we have here. They go through that. What would
Correct.
be the next thing we would see from him?
If the plan development
If
is
they approved, the
approved,
commission
if
approved
it's
it.
approved at the commission level, the next item you would see would be a preliminary plat for phase 1, I would assume.
So basically
you
the
will
same
see
as
it.
we have here, just more of a defined phase 1 of
Correct.
that
Once they're
particular
two
thing.
platting, we will be able to get more information because DOT will start, doing their stuff. There'll be more traffic impact analysis, more analysis in general because it's now being engineered. So
So-
yes, we will have more info once they start the platting process.
So that would answer our questions at that point, but it's still got to go through commission, just like today. They could do the same thing. They could approve, disapprove, or table it themselves, correct?
Correct.
And then go from there, and then it would eventually come back to us again where we're at today.
You will be seeing a lot more of Bridlewood if it
Right.
ever passes. So you will see all the different phases and all the different homes, all the different multifamily structures. You will see every
It's
part
continuous.
of this. Correct.
Okay. So if we approve this tonight, it still goes to the commission. He doesn't have approval. He's just got the recommendation from us.
Yes, you are advisory. You don't actually approve.
So if I can, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the residential development is going to start from the west to the east. So along the state road. From the school standpoint, don't know what the school is going to do. What type of school they're going to build. That will greatly impact the trips proposed to 174th and 202nd Second Street. Now, as far as evaluating what can be done on that road, since the development is starting from west to east, it's going to be a significant amount of time to get to the east side for those roadways to either A, need improvement or evaluate. On top of it, to determine if the roadway can be expanded, you'd have to do a route survey of the roadway, determine where the right-of-ways are, the trees, which is more of an engineered construction standpoint that we'd go through with the city as far as preliminary platting and subdivision plans. So to answer a lot of the concern questions about, well, what can the road be widened, honestly, won't know until it's surveyed. We have discussions with the city. The existing chip sealed road would have to be cored to determine if the whole road has to go or there's parts that can be kept because the substructure of the road is sufficient. It's not an easy, what can you do to make the road wider or that sort of thing. There's a lot of variables in it as well.
So that's a long process, too.
So that is a very long process.
174th has no county designation. It's strictly a city street, correct?
174th is our street.
Okay.
The other thing to add is so right now, if they went straight single family and say they didn't decide to overlay with the multifamily or assistant living, then you're at 1,432 homes versus the additional units. So if you trip the additional units, that's a lot more traffic than the 1,432 homes, which is a big difference. That's a quarter addition of the subdivision. So that's another reason why it's hard to give all these answers right now That's why you do a concept plan. As you move forward with platting, you do all these studies, and we don't let the plats, staff wouldn't stand up here and recommend approval of a preliminary plat because it wouldn't meet all city regulations then, because the traffic wouldn't be handled. So.
And one thing to take into consideration too is since those 3 subdivisions are platted, roadway improvements, utility improvements, the only utility improvements that will be required would be to serve them with water and sewer. Roadway improvements would not be justifiable because it's a platted subdivision. They're legally bound by, since they're platted by capacity. On top of it, since they are platted lots, the capacity is reserved, so the city would have to serve them or figure out from a capacity standpoint legally of how to provide them wastewater, even if they don't have capacity at the plant.
Thank you. So then I guess we have that, and then.
So if we were to approve this, we would get the answers at the next meeting.
If the commission approves it.
If the commission approves it.
At preliminary plat.
At preliminary.
At preliminary plot.
I don't have the Swanee River Water Management District. Chris, you might want to speak more to this, but we work with them on everything involving the aquifer. Well, we would, as we move forward with preliminary plat, is when we work with them with each preliminary plat, with each phase that comes in. So we do have a permit right now, so the amount of water that they're going to use, we're not asking for additional capacity.
But we have to be public. Actually, there was no motion.
So the motion wasn't,
No, he did not. He said he had great concern. He had no motion to table.
that he
did not
began the
make a
motion, but
motion.
we
We
did
did
not
not make a
continue the
motion.
motion yet because he did not choose a date. You have to choose a date
That's what the
certain.
point was, is he had to choose a date, and we were discussing the date. But even then, if the motion dies. You gotta turn your mic on.
I can't support it. I cannot support it. I have thought more about this over the past month. I've listened to things tonight. I love this city. I love what we have here. I just think it's too big. And I'm going to be a no vote.
On, for a motion, or?
On a motion.
What motion would you make? Just that so you're not to table it, but you want to say no on the whole project?
I would say no, yes.
We have a motion to disapprove it.
I'll make a motion to disapprove it.
Christie, go ahead.
A second in order to move forward to a vote. So do I have a
Okay.
second?
No,
Only the board, only the board.
only one person can second it.
And obviously the chair cannot second it.
Right.
I would like to make a motion to table it until we have our other two members present.
Mr. Attorney, does that mean the first motion failed due to lack of second? Okay. So, so for tabling it, do you have a date certain?
27th?
It can either be September 13th or September 27th, or the next two. Okay, I have.
27th.
So I have written down the motion is to table to September 27th. Do I have a second?
Even though I'm a
It
no
doesn't
vote,
need us.
I'm going to agree to do that to give the other two an opportunity to vote.
Understood. Then I will move forward with the roll call vote. Donald Alderman,
Yes.
Brad Riddle,
Yes.
John Walsh,
Yes.
and Tim Bolliger and Hector Tapanis are absent. So motion passes 3-0.
It is, what, 9:38? I conclude this, or I need a motion to close the meeting? Yeah.
I make a motion that we adjourn tonight's meeting.
I second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. All right, motion, meeting's closed at 9.